pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. I'm going to turn over to Dr. Pelletieri to brief us on the superintendent's report.
President Scavo, thank you very much. I want to start tonight's remarks with a security concern that has really permeated a particular school. In particular, I see their principal here tonight, Mr. Wells. Mr. Wells, thank you for coming out tonight and your support throughout this. And Cayuga Elementary in particular, we've got a lot of emails and phone calls about Cayuga and some security concerns in regards to an individual in that community who has a history that many people know and is disconcerting to them, to say the least. As soon as this information was shared with us, these concerns, Mr. Wells called me. We immediately called the Suffolk County Police Department, shared these concerns with them, and I want to actually thank them for their immediate response. We have had cars every day at Cayuga. We've had additional security of our own there, inside and outside the school. We've had police car presence in the AM and in the PM at dismissal. I spoke recently with the Inspector Regino of the 4th Precinct. I want to thank him for his support and his communication, his constant communication with all the work that he's done in that particular school area and throughout the district, quite honestly. I also had a great conversation with our Commissioner of Police, Rodney Harrison, and we have had a lot of conversation internally in terms of concerns in that community. Every concern that was addressed or brought to our attention or the police's attention was investigated. None of them proved to be immediately founded. There was no immediate threat to the school. No individual was on school property that should not have been at any time. That doesn't mean that we will not be vigilant in our concern and working with our local authorities. I even worked with our district attorney's office and their chief of staff there, who is a friend to the community. So I wanted to thank him again publicly, Mr. Wells, for his work at the school. If parents are concerned about things that are happening there, if they feel that there is an issue at hand, they should call the school and share that information with them. If they want, they can call the police as well. The police provided a phone number. Call the precinct 854-8400. And if there's an emergency, they should call 911. There are also going to be some security upgrades we talk about tonight in the budget. As we move over to our budget presentation, I think our community is going to be pleased with some of those upgrades that we have as well. And we'll go into as much detail as we can about them. But I did want to have that conversation up front because I know many people were concerned about that. I don't know if there are any questions from the board about that particular, those comments that I had just now about the security concerns at Cayuga.
Any questions from the board? No? Okay. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you very much. Okay, I'm ready then to move forward. Michelle, you're back on. Thank you so much. We're finalizing our budget presentation for the year.
Yes, we are. So this is budget workshop number 5. So the areas we're going to discuss tonight are our projected revenue budget, the proposed expenditure budget, fund balance and reserves, our transfer to capital line item, capital reserve proposition, budget highlights, future concerns, and next steps. So we're going to start with the projected revenue budget. As we've said in prior presentations, we're looking at $4 million in new revenues for the 23-24 school year, and that's comprised of our property tax levy, which is at a 2.08% increase, and that is tax cap compliance. And our state aid increase is approximately $4 million. Of that $4 million, we are currently in what's called a hold harmless status for foundation aid. So we received the minimum increase of foundation aid, which is 3%. That comes to $2.7 million of the $4 million in state aid. Then the other increases that you see here, there are small increases, decreases, but the main increase for next year we're projecting is in our interest and earnings. Since the bank accounts these days are paying such high rates, we're projecting a $1.6 million increase in our interest. I say at the bottom, we're not expecting an on-time state budget, which we all now know is a fact. We don't have an on-time state budget, so we don't expect any significant changes when the budget is adopted in the coming weeks. Our proposed expenditure budget, we're looking at a 3.84 budget to budget percentage increase. And I broke this chart down by object code. So this is the broadest categories of our budget. And you can see I grouped it by the largest percentage of our budget down to the smallest. So the largest percentage of our budget is our salaries and employee benefits. And then we have our BOCES expenditures. And you can see in the percentage change column, everything is around 6.3%, 7%, and our tax levy is at 2.08%. We were on hold harmless for state aid at 3%, and yet inflation is at 8%. So this is where we have the first disparity between our revenues and our expenditures. One item I do want to point out on this chart, which might not be clear to everyone, is our interfund transfers. That is comprised of a transfer to our special aid fund. We're budgeting $965,000 this year. That's the district's required 20% share of our special education summer program. And then we're budgeting $140,000 for our UPK because we know that our rate is increasing to provide the program, but the state is still only allowing us to allocate $5,400 per student. So we're allocating an additional $400 per student to cover that expenditure. And then the other item in the interfund transfers is our transfer to capital. We're budgeting $8.79 million in capital projects, and that I'll go into more detail in the coming slides. Our fund balance and reserves. This chart will just show from 2015 forward how far we have come, where in 2015 we had $5.5 million in our restricted reserves and fund balance, to as of June 30th, 2022, we had $67.7 million in our fund balance and reserves. So at June 30th of 22, we had $49.3 million in restricted reserves. And during last year's budget vote, the community did vote to allow us to use $6 million in those restricted reserves to help balance the current year's budget. We are anticipating to close out the 22-23 school year with an operating surplus of approximately $9.2 million. That's based on our March numbers, so that still can change. I do anticipate that it might go up slightly, but those are still estimates that we have going through June. What that is made up of is underspending the expenditure budget for this year by approximately $3.4 million, and we do have unanticipated revenues of approximately $5.8 million. What makes up $5.8 million in unanticipated revenues, you might ask? Well, I can tell you. $3.2 million is we transferred funds back from the capital projects fund because we had two roofing projects that came in under budget. So that money gets put back into the general fund and gets added to our revenues and accounted for as surplus at the end of the year. We also had $1 million in E-rate that we received for this year. So that's $4.2 million. We received approximately $755,000 more in interest expense than we had anticipated, and we received more reimbursements of prior year BOCES expenditures. So that's where we are now with that $5.8 million. So in total, we're looking at an operating surplus to end this current school year of roughly $9.2 million. Again, that can fluctuate. It's still an estimate. So when we look at the total budget together, revenues of $354 million and proposed expenditures of $363 million, we have a budget variance of $9.4 million. Now remember, we're anticipating about $9.2 million in operating surplus. So that is how we're projecting to close that budget variance. There are two ways we can do that. I know we have talked about in the past that when we take our surplus, we reallocate it back to our reserves. We can do that and allocate it to the restricted reserves at the end of this year. That would put back everything that we used plus some for the 22-23 school year. Or we can take the entire operating surplus and appropriate that as fund balance to close that budget variance for the next school year. In the end, they both work out the exact same way. So right now we have $43 million in restricted reserves. If we put the $9 million back to the restricted reserves and then took it back out to balance the budget, we're back where we are right now today, which is a very healthy position. The difference between appropriating fund balance or allocating the reserves. When you allocate the restricted reserves, you have to match it to the expenses, and you're limited to the amount of an expenditure. You can't say, oh, I have $8 million in the workers' compensation reserve. I'm going to take all of that and put it in the budget. No, if workers' compensation is $2 million, you're limited to $2 million. When you use appropriated fund balance, you don't have to match it. You could just say, we need $9.4 million to close that budget. We're going to appropriate the fund balance, and it ends there. Ends up financially, we're in the exact same position. It seems like a higher number this year, and we all know the health insurance increases were so much more expensive. We know that we hired a lot of staff members last year for a 9-period day, and now those staff members are on our salary schedule. They're on step. So these are all things that are contributing to this large increase. We have a healthy reserve balance and a healthy fund balance, and that's the reason you have those items, is so that you don't have to have wild swings from years to year. I think this year is a little bit more of an anomaly, and we might want to close that budget variance without making any drastic changes. We have started making changes with staffing, collapsing sections and doing away with overages to start making changes that we're anticipating for the next school year when those grants go away. But right now, I would suggest that we just, close this budget variance without making any drastic changes to our programs, because we do have the fund balance and reserves to keep us in that healthy position. I did run this by our auditors, our internal auditors, and they were good with the way we're looking at for the next year as well. Does anybody have any questions on that so far?
Alex Piccarello?
Just a quick, and you don't have to answer on the spot, but can you get us information on how many positions or how much we're paying through grants or through the remainder of the ESSER funds that we'll have to either figure out whether we're going to put it in next year's budget or get rid of it?
Yes, I can get that out to you in the next Friday letter.
The questions, board? Just, Michelle, if you could just explain what hold harmless is, and when we anticipating that's going to expire, and how may that impact us moving forward?
So when the foundation aid formula was put into effect in 2007-8, it ran the way the formula is supposed to run for a couple of years, and then the state said this is very expensive and we're going to freeze it for several years, which is what they did in 8, 9, 9, 10 in those early years. When the formula is what they call running, it's based on your enrollment and your wealth in your district and the income taxes from your district that gets sent up to the state that can get reallocated back down to the districts. It's a very complicated formula, and I'm oversimplifying it because even to go through that, it's a crazy formula. So 3 years ago, we had some districts were complaining that they weren't getting their fair share, while other districts were getting more than their fair share. So the governor enacted in his budget 3 years ago that he would let the formula run the way it's supposed to run, but they wouldn't harm any districts who had been receiving more money in the earlier years by giving them a zero, because foundation aid is the largest portion of our aid, and no other expense is staying at zero. So Sachem is on hold harmless because in the early years, we did receive more in the foundation aid category than if the formula had run the way it was supposed to. Now they're equalizing that over these 3 years. So any district that received the funds early on are scheduled to receive zero because the districts that didn't get the funds are getting it now. So to be fair to the districts that are getting zero, especially in a time of 8% inflation, they say, we're going to hold you harmless. We're not going to give you the zero that you should be getting. We're going to give you a nominal percentage. And that's what they did. They gave us 3%.
Okay, but now does that hold harmless expire?
This is the last year of hold
So
harmless.
next year we could possibly be impacted
Again, right. So once the formula runs, and I don't know how that's going to play out for next year, but we don't know if we will be at a zero.
Yeah.
So that's one of the, and I have future budget concerns coming up on later slides. That's one of the concerns. We don't know what's going to happen with that formula, and that's the largest portion of our aid. So I hope that explains it.
Mr. Isernia?
Yeah, Michelle, presuming things continue the way they're going,
Mhm.
your suggestion, does your recommendation to us is going to be that we take this operating surplus, we appropriate directly into your budget,
Mhm.
along with your increased revenues you're going to get. That's going to close the gap as you see it today.
Mhm.
But at the end of that process, we're still going to have our 4% unappropriated fund balance,
Mhm.
and we're still going to have 43 million in
Reserves.
restricted reserves.
Yes.
Does that 43 million count the field proposition money?
No, no, the field proposition would be, so that's a very good point, Mr. Acernia. So we're proposing a Proposition 2 would remove $7 million from that, so that the capital reserve would go from 12 million to 5 million. So then, yes, our restricted reserves then would go from 43 million to 36
Okay,
million.
but that would happen in any, I guess I was getting to, that's going to happen in any circumstance? If we go with that proposition, that would happen regardless of whether we applied the surplus or whether we,
Right.
We're in the same position.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Thanks.
Any other questions? Board? Just, I know this is the final budget discussion. I guess this question is really for Chris. Last year, we talked about, the topic came up of guidance counselors and the caseloads being 300 plus students. And there was some concern about, whether or not we're stretching them too far. And there was a recommendation, actually, I think I brought it up, was to allocate another guidance counselor to handle just the career and technical education students, both in Sachem, but also kids that go to BOCES, that would be their new guidance counselor. So the kids can get the individualized services that they need. Have we built anything into the budget with regards to that guidance position with one of each high school?
We don't have that specifically built into the budget. I know that was brought to Dr. Miller and Mr. Trombetta. We spoke about that as well, as trying to get one at East and one at North that is working in that vein, but not specifically just one person to do those things.
Well, it would be one person at each high school, I think is what we
Right,
talked
right,
about.
but not hiring additional staff. We do have here, as we go through the presentation, you'll see the additional staff that's recommended. And obviously, the board can make a recommendation and say we want to add these other positions as well. But what you'll see in the presentation here tonight is what's being recommended.
Any other questions?
And these figures can still change. Just even before coming downstairs, we had a couple of, minor changes that will be in the adoption presentation, but those will be spelled out specifically so you know what has changed from tonight to that presentation. So the transfer to capital, that transfer to capital will be utilized to fund the projects that are listed here that we did talk about at the last meeting: the new interior hallway doors at our elementaries, auditorium in air conditioning at our middle schools. We'll continue the roof replacement projects at both Sagamore and Samoset middle schools. North High School Little Theater renovation, the East High School auditorium sound system and lighting, and then the district-wide building management system. The district-wide building management system is the only project that is not eligible for state building aid. And then we're also proposing 2 new vans for the transportation department, one of those being a wheelchair van. They were budgeted to get 3 vans in this current school year, but I mentioned last time that prices had gone up so significantly that we could only purchase 2 of those vans. And then we would like an additional wheelchair van that just gives us more flexibility when we have field trips, that we can keep those in-house and do them through our own department. So the next item would be the proposed proposition on the ballot in May for utilization of the capital reserve.
Actually, just before you go, any questions from the board on the transfer capital and the upgrades that are being made?
Well, not really a question, more the comment about the new interior hallway doors. We're doing that because they're from our safety report from Lieutenant Pangano, that these doors are going to ensure more safe
Yes.
environment inside the school if
Correct.
that we need.
Correct.
We're going to speak more specifically to that as a security upgrade on a couple slides ahead.
So the proposed proposition for utilization of the capital reserve, that'll be a Proposition 2 on the ballot this May. So the high school East baseball multipurpose field reconstruction and also the North baseball multipurpose field reconstruction, that would involve new synthetic turf for both the infield and the outfield, the dugouts with storage, fencing on the first and third baselines, new bleacher pads and elevated bleachers, and replacing and upgrading the pitcher warm-up area and the batting cage. And it's important to note that utilization of the capital reserve has no impact on the tax levy. So the tax levy that I mentioned earlier of 2.08% does not change whether the Prop 2 is approved or it's not approved. That does not change. So how the baseball multipurpose fields would impact the capital reserve, like we mentioned earlier, at $12.2 million balance in that reserve now. If this proposition were to move forward, the fields would cost just under $7 million, and that would leave us $5.3 million in that capital reserve. On tonight's agenda, there are two resolutions that relate to both the capital transfer to capital and the capital reserve. The first one is the SECRA Type 2 resolution that's required for all capital projects, and that's just indicating that there's no significant impact to the environment for the projects that are being recommended. And the second resolution is to place that Proposition 2 on the ballot for the utilization of the capital reserve. So those are on tonight's consent agenda.
Hey, Rob, just a question.
Yes, get it.
Michelle, can you just talk to the $6.9 million? I think somebody mentioned, you mentioned before, it's eligible for building aid. Can you just talk to that a little bit? I think it's 76.6% back that we get over a period of
Correct.
time.
Yes, we would get that over the 15-year period of the life of this project up at state aid. Building aid does not start to flow until the project is finalized and we submit the final cost reports
So in essence, we're getting back 76 cents on the dollar for what we're spending.
for what we're
these
spending.
fields.
Correct.
Thank you.
Meredith?
So if the community voted no to these new fields,
Mhm.
it wouldn't change the budget in any way. If they voted yes, it wouldn't change the budget in any way.
Correct.
So that money that's in that capital reserve, that is for specific projects that the community will vote
votes
on.
Yes,
just wanted to-
and those reserves come from prior year surplus. That's
Right.
how the reserves are funded.
And we can only use them for a capital reserve, right? So like if we had a big gap in our budget, we couldn't go in and take that money.
No,
So it
correct.
would just sit there. If the community voted no, it would literally just sit there until we
Capital
voted yes to
reserve
something.
utilization requires community approval.
Thank you.
Yes.
Stephanie?
How do we replenish this reserve? You said with surpluses from previous years. So that 9 million that we had could possibly go into this reserve?
Not all of it. The balance remaining on this reserve is just over $8 million that's left to put in it because the reserve was established with a limit, a $30 million limit.
Okay. And then the next question, which isn't for her, but probably Dr. Pelletieri, how long would this take before we start getting aid back?
The project would have to be completed. We would begin the project not this summer, but the following summer, unless we could jump on something that might be able to get us to go a little bit earlier, right? Mr. Grillo's here tonight, actually. John, would you mind jumping up for a second? You have any more information you can lend on that piece, our architect?
Good evening, everybody. So in order for us to get that 76% building aid, we need to submit our plans and specs to the State Education Department. And again, in order to get that building aid, we have to tie it in with an interior project. So at East, we're going to tie it in with the sound and lighting system at the auditorium. And at North, we're going to do the little theater. Once we get the go-ahead, the budget passes, the prop passes, we start drawing plans and specs. We'll get those up to the state probably in about 6 weeks or so. We already started doing some prelim work on the East Auditorium. We had a couple of meetings already, so we can hit the ground running. Right now, the State Education Department is running about 20 to 22 weeks, which is down from 38 a couple of years ago. We can't issue purchase orders, go out to bid, or anything until we have SED approval, or we'll lose that building aid.
Thank
How
you,
long is the
John.
project? Like, how long does it take to complete something like this?
We'll have it done in the summer. Yeah, because they're out of the way. So the second varsity baseball is over, let's say first week in June, second week in June, we can start and then it'll go through the summer. And if it drags into the fall a little bit, it's not the primary use.
And we do have to wait 18 months after commissioner's approval before we can file those cost reports. So there is that period.
What does that mean?
It means you're not eligible. So 18 months after we get the approval from the state, that's the first time that we can submit our final cost reports to start generating aid.
Okay. Thanks.
And just, I know that the board started doing this, I'm sorry, Michael.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
No, go ahead.
The board started doing this a couple of years ago, using a capital reserve to fund this. The only other alternative would be a bond, and bonds right now are at 7% interest, which would cost us a ton of money in interest, on loan interest. So this is the mechanism of being able to do this without having to, pay that interest income, to a bank
Correct.
at, $7 million worth of work. So it's the reason why I guess the board started doing this, a couple of years back. Meredith?
So the building aid, the aid will come back to us, 76.6, but it's over a course of 15 years. Now, when it comes back, can we just take that money that we took out of the capital and put it straight back in, or we still have to wait for us to get a surplus to do that?
So the capital reserve has a 10-year life and a maximum of $30 million. So there's, I believe, like just over $8 million remaining that could go in to fund that. Once you reach that cap of 30 million that was put in, you cannot put anything else in there. And the life of that reserve is only 10 years. So it was 2019, so 2029, that reserve is done.
And then what happens? We put out for a vote for a new
You
capital
can establish
reserve.
a new
Okay.
capital reserve.
Mr. Attorney? Yeah. Okay. Any other questions? Capital projects?
So this is a rendering of the baseball / multipurpose field at each of the high schools. And you can see where Mr. Grillo did these renderings for us, where we could fit those practice fields. So in this slide for East, that practice field is 160 feet by 290 feet. And I mean, it's 140 feet by 280 feet. And the one at North is 160 feet by 290 feet. So we did ask Mr. Grillo to give us some renderings of what it would look like if the practice fields were lined for various sports. So here we have for East with the multipurpose, and in here he was able to flip the field to get the 160 by 290, and he shows the lining for field hockey and for soccer. And then
Mr. Rackets, if you flip the field that way, there's a pitching mound, right? Are kids going to be running around the pitching mound and tripping over the pitching mound?
no, it's the turf is all level. That's correct, right, Mr. Grillo? It's all level. It's all turf.
Yep.
I
But
questioned
we're also going to get a removable,
a removable mound.
if
yes.
we so choose to do. Go ahead, Mr. Grillo.
Yeah, there is an option. We've done it. It's portable, but it takes 5 or 6 people to move it. So if we wanted to run that way, I do like to run multi-purpose fields north-south as opposed to east-west. So you could go at east. It's a little, you'll get a bigger multi-purpose field there. The pitcher's mound would be movable. You move it off in the fall, and then they can run it that way. If the coaches and the players hate the portable mound, they want a permanent mound, we would have to run it east-west, and then we could leave the real mound. At north, we'd be able to put in a permanent mound because we're not going to run it that way.
Okay.
Here's the
And I know,
rendering
yeah, we
that
spoke
one.
to the East coaches as well, I understand, and would be comfortable perhaps with a portable mound, movable mound if necessary. And I know many districts, many is a strong word, some districts have.
Correct.
And these are the renderings for the north multipurpose
So
field
how do you
also.
color these in without messing up with, the outfield, for example? How do you color these lines in?
The field paint.
So what my recommendation, because to me, a baseball outfield is kind of a purist thing. I don't want to see lines all over, but that's just me. What I did in Manhasset, in the 4 corners, we put literally a white turf dot. So when the staff goes out to line them, it's already laid out for them in the corners. Or what I'm doing in Seaford, they were adamant about putting permanent lines in the outfield, and that's what we did. We lined the fields, and then you would have your blue, yellow, red, or whatever colors we decide to choose to put into the outfield.
But we could use a liner or
Correct.
that would wash away, right? And then
Yeah.
this way, when baseball season comes, you'd still have a pristine
Right.
green outfield.
Correct. You'd only have the 4 dots. The paint that they use for synthetic turf, it'll wash away by the end of the season.
Thank you. And we could pitch them either way, right? We have the other ones too, Michelle?
Well, that's the
these.
north presentation, yes. Okay, so budget highlights, just to point out a few things that are represented.
Can we go back 1 second to that slide? Could marching band use these areas as well, Mrs. Trombetta, right? Okay, because that's a group that we're going to be honoring actually at the end of the year, state champions again. We want to make sure that they get a space on turf because they always perform out on a turf as well. So that'll be a great use of that as well. And these are not just baseball fields. They're going to be used throughout the year.
Correct. So some things that are in this budget It maintains all of our current programs and services. It continues to fund the capital improvements through the transfer to capital appropriation code. We're expanding the new theater program to North High School that was placed in East High School this year. It implements a middle school, college, and career program. We're increasing our high school deans from 0.4 to 0.6 full-time equivalent positions. And we are also looking to hire a clerical at each of the high schools to work with these deans.
Can I just jump in for 1 second? Because I was probably remiss when I did not talk about this during my superintendent's report, but let's talk about the two high schools for a second. They're musicals. So I saw Footloose over at East, exceptional. Beauty and the Beast, I know, had a pretty much of a grand finale one of the nights, right? We had a little smoke issue. We had to clear everyone out and get them back. But I want to commend both of the schools for what I saw in those performances in terms of the diversity that was reflected for our students, the embracing of all kids in the school, being able to participate, the support from parents, the community, the staff. It was really powerful for me to sit and see that and see the kids and their parents and little brothers and sisters. And again, Sachem needs to be a place that feels welcome and is a part of. We want to make sure that we do that. And I know that our drama group, our teams with the theaters, our groups with the theaters are really embracing that. And I want to commend our folks for that. Yes, sir.
So just a comment, just a shout out to the middle schools as well. 3 phenomenal productions. And at Seneca, they actually made it snow in the auditorium. Last year, they made it rain. This year, they made it snow. So they do a phenomenal job. And you could just see the joy on the kid's face. So,
Yeah, this just reminded me of it. Thank you.
I just wanted to have a quick comment because unfortunately I was only able to go to Seneca, though I went to every single one of them. They did Frozen and they did it in such a way that, obviously there's a real main part in there, but they did it where several different girls were able to play that main part. And I thought that was really special because it really showed each child that they were able to fulfill that role. It was really nice. And it did snow right on me. It was great.
Okay. So
Sabrina, actually, Sabrina, is that a question?
What's this middle school, college, and career program? What is that?
Where is that?
Right underneath the new theater program in the north.
We are reviewing that. We're going to actually present. You asked us to present on that. So we're reviewing. It's a program that is in place already. Yes, but we need to look at implementation and improvements.
Meredith?
This could be totally off base because, I don't know the rules very well about certain.
You want to write it down and slide it to me then? Or?
No, I'm going to ask it. The deans, I think it's great. I know they're all teachers, and I don't know the difference, in certifications or whatever between the deans and the guidance counselors. But if we couldn't actually put new guidance counselors in place, is there a way to have our deans kind of work with our career and tech people? Maybe a thinking outside the box kind of thing?
Yeah, sure.
The dean's role is really about relationships. They do a lot around attendance. They do a little bit of discipline. It's more really attendance, and that's something that we really need to focus on and making sure our kids are in class where they need to be. And I've seen them in action with our kids, and it's amazing to see that they know almost every kid. 2,163 kids, at North, they know those kids, and to be able to have those conversations with them and keep them on track. So that's really their focus. Might they be able to do some work alongside a counselor to help a child in terms of whether it's CTE or BOCES or something like that? That's not their training necessarily, but again, forging relationships is their area of expertise, and that might be something we could utilize them for.
Meredith, it's just to jump in. I think it's two different job responsibilities. I was I was going to want to look at maybe funding this through attrition. We have 20 retirees, but we're really hiring 12 new teachers or 2 staff members, full-time educators. Could we allocate some of that money that we budgeted for this year, to backfill and put 2 guidance counselors in? And the benefit to that would, once again, would be is to reduce the caseload of the guidance counselors, but then to give a group of students that are going a different career path the opportunity to have somebody who could be an expert in different trade schools and guide them appropriately. I know that we did it in our school. We're a 100%, CTE school. We have different guidance counselors for different programs. So we might have one guidance counselor responsible for 5 programs, but that guidance counselor is an expert in the colleges and in the offerings that are available, scholarships specific to those particular programs. So I was kind of, thinking on those lines, not create an additional revenue, but if we're already budgeted for the current year's salaries and we're going to have 20 retirements, can we do it through attrition? Sort of how we lower class sizes and things like that. So I guess that would be an update. If you can provide us with an update. as
Sure,
to how we
can.
can make that work, if it's even possible.
Yep, we can talk about that.
Okay. So some of our security upgrades district-wide, we're looking to hire 9 new security guards.
So that did come right out of the recommendations from Lieutenant Pangaro.
The door hardening that we mentioned earlier as part of the transfer to capital line item.
Again, part of that as well. And that is a hardening in terms of the doors themselves and the
The
hardware.
lock sets and hardware.
Lock sets and
correct.
hardware. That is a direct out of concern for older doors and those louvers at the bottom of those older doors, and particularly at our elementary buildings. We want to do this across the district, but that is something that is highly recommended. It's costly, but doesn't matter what the price is for something like that. We need to get to work on that, and that's something that we're recommending and doing right now.
Chris, that would also include hardening of the glass, right? Some of
Yes.
the glass we have is
Yes,
not.
and we actually have to
Correct.
remove any glass. In
Any
old
wire
school, I
glass.
remember we had all wire glass everywhere, right? But now we're removing those, so that has to be replaced as well and hardened. That's correct. I'll jump in on this one because I'm kind of excited is not the right word, but I really, obviously, we talk about safety and security all the time. It's really a primary focus, and so we're going to implement this year using some funds that we have this year and next year. We're going to put license plate readers through a camera project district-wide. That means all 15 schools, everyone that comes onto our campus and leaves our campus, we will have a shot of the car that comes in, the license plate that comes in. We'll be able to go back and look at those. We'll be able to see them in real time, and we'll also be able to go back and see, well, this car was on our campus at this time for this period of time and then left our campus. I think it's a really impactful security upgrade. It'll be at all 15 schools. I'm really happy that Mr. Renda and his team was able to put this together. We're going to purchase it through BOCES, so we get aid on it again. And part of that is coming out of the Smart Schools bond from years ago. So a real marriage of many different areas and people to be able to do something like that. And will really allow us to, I think, add a whole nother layer. We keep adding layers for security. It'll add another layer of security for our schools, again, at all 15 schools. And you want to talk a little about, Patty, you should talk about scholarship. You've been trying to get this for what, 8 years?
At least. Scholarship is another program that we'll be taking in the secondary buildings. They'll be at the entrances. So when a student swipes in basically with their school ID, similar to a staff does to get indoors, students will be doing that when they enter the buildings. That'll be their attendance in the morning, allowing us to know that they're in the building. We'll also be putting them in the bathrooms for accountability. We'll know who's in the bathroom at what time based on their swipe. And especially at the high school with the lunchrooms, we will have them there. And it's amazing. It'll be a green light, red light. So if a student's not supposed to be in the cafeteria, when they go to swipe in, it'll be a red light allowing the teacher to know that that's not their lunch period. They shouldn't be there. We'll also be putting them at the library. They're portable, so we can use them where we need them in the different buildings. But all 5 secondary buildings are getting these, and we're very excited to have them.
Yeah, again, security, right? Like all these upgrades are really focused. And while we this year said kids have their ID and be visible, that's one aspect to it by saying it, but actually having to swipe in the building, that's right then and there. We'll know if this person belongs in the building, and if they don't have their ID, we'll be able to get them a replacement if need be or whatever that calls for it. But we'll easily be able to pick out where kids belong, where they're supposed to be. And again, this is, believe me, is not about turning our schools into some kind of hardened, prison or something like that. That is not what we want. We don't want that culture, without a doubt. But we want safety. We want to know who is in our buildings and are they where they are supposed to be. So it's an important upgrade, I think, as well.
Stephanie?
If we have a biker gang, meaning kids on bikes coming up to the school, do they does a license plate reader or cameras catch them? Like if a bunch of kids are coming up to just
The camera is, it doesn't
Constant?
take a snapshot. It's flowing.
okay.
So we're not going to give too much information out, but yeah, if I'm riding my bike, I would be seen. Sure.
Okay.
Do we have a lot of biker gangs in Sachem? Kid bikers.
Okay. So some future budget concerns. I mentioned earlier the health insurance increases. We had 2 years of double-digit increases. Not quite sure what's going to happen for the next school year. TRS rate, we are anticipating that will start to increase. We were at 10.29% this year. We're projecting about 10% for next year, but the ERS system is at 13%. So the TRS is lagging behind, and we're going to expect that that's going to start to turn around and catch up. Contractual expenditures, transportation, we mentioned we had that RFP for our van service. Year one, we were able to negotiate down to 8%, and then it goes from 5 to 7% over the next 4 years. But again, still, we are hold harmless on our state aid, and we're limited to a tax cap for our property taxes. So those items aren't keeping pace. Foundation aid formula, we don't know what's going to happen with that. I believe there was $1 million allocated in the budget, if it gets passed, up at the state level to look at that formula. Like, it is such a complicated formula. They're hiring staff to just review it and see how it can be improved. And then, as we mentioned, the federal ESSER grants will be expiring at the end of the next school year. So we have to look to see how we're going to save those programs and any staff members. And
yeah, that is a frightening cliff, right? To look over those. The federal aid got us through these past few years that would have been much leaner years. And we put some robust programs in. We hired, remember, those 5 social workers that 1 year, right out of the grants, things like that, our outdoor spaces and classrooms, great many upgrades. Our summer, we're going to talk about summer a little bit under board discussion. A lot of that clubs and after-school activities and Saturdays and things like that. We're going to have to take a real hard look at this as we move forward, because those federal grants are going away. We had asked that they spread them out, let us have more time with things like that, and that did not happen. So certainly, Michelle, thank you for making us all concerned before we even pass this budget about next year's budget. But that is
Looking ahead.
Michelle's job. We are always looking forward.
Any questions from the board? Stephanie?
What was the health insurance increase this year to last year percentage-wise?
the family rate increased 14.9%, and the individual rate 12.45%.
Do you expect that for next year too?
We better not.
I know.
I'm sorry.
I know.
We hope not. It really was unprecedented to have 2 years of double-digit increases like that.
Okay.
But, based on coming out of COVID and all the free testing and free boosters and vaccines, and it had to be paid for somewhere, and now it's trickling down.
Any other questions from the board?
One more slide.
Yep. So next steps, April 18th, which is a Tuesday, will be the budget adoption. Again, I just want to note that the numbers might change slightly. I will have a slide that will detail, based on discussion tonight, things that we will look to try to build into those figures. But at that meeting, we'll be asking the board to adopt the budget. And then May 3rd will be the budget hearing, and May 16th, the vote.
You can see on your right, I suppose, right? If I'm turned that way, the outdoor learning space. And now that the weather's getting nice, I'm really excited about this, that our kids will be outside throughout the elementary schools. And we're looking to do upgrades with grant money at our middle school and high schools as well. Let's get kids outside and learning as much as possible while the weather is good.
Rob, just one comment on the 18th meeting. If we can just get some time on the agenda for the Budget Advisory Committee, they're going to present what their findings and recommendations are before we do the budget adoption. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions from the board regarding budget? No.
That concludes my report. President Scavo, thank you very
Thank
much.
you. Okay, brings us to item C, student board member reports. Any reports from you guys? Matthew?
Today we had our annual March Madness tournament final. That was great. I had a good time there. And now we're going on break. Kind of excited for that. And we come back and seniors go on their senior trip. So we're excited for that too.
All right, sounds good. Alyssa?
All of the same things at East.
Yeah. Good. Yeah. Okay.
Someone write that down.
Great. Thank you, guys. Item D is approval of minutes. I need a motion to approve the minutes from March 22nd. Stephanie, second by Vinnie Reynolds. Questions or discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried. That brings us to the visitor section of our agenda. Traditionally, what we do is, we have any discussion pertaining to the agenda, the first session, and then the second session would be any items that are not on the agenda. As part of the superintendent's report, he did discuss elementary school security, and I know there's some questions, and not some questions, but there's some cards filled out dealing with specifically security. I just want to remind people that everybody will be called up individually and be recognized by the president before speaking. Board president reserves the right to ask an individual who is rude, disrespectful, disruptive to not continue his or her comments. Debate between members of the audience and or the Board of Education is inappropriate and not permitted. Board of Education will not permit discussions involving individual district personnel, students, community members. Persons wishing to discuss matters involving individual district personnel or students should contact the superintendent's office during regular business hours. All right, so I'll call up the first person, Vincent Perone. Yeah.
Mr. Perone, there's a mic there. Yeah.
Good. My name is Vincent Perone. I'm a father of three in Sachem. One's a 17-year-old boy, 16-year-old boy, 6-year-old little girl at my advanced age. So I want to talk about safety, and I appreciate everything you guys are doing about the hardening of the doors and, extra security guards and guidance counselors. That's all very important. All I have to say is, I have to say thank God every day that my children get home safe from school, all right? So there's no reason that a parent needs to say thank God, because we look at schools as a safe haven, learning, there's, anti-bullying, all that stuff is great, but all I could do is read in the paper, and God forbid something happens like it's happened in the last 4 months, Nashville, Denver, Arlington, Indianapolis, St. Paul, Des Moines, Newport News, Apopka, Florida, Del City, Oklahoma, all these places where it's not just stuff that happened in the school, but in the surroundings. Some of it happened after school, ball games and stuff. What are we doing as a board, as a community, to work with the police departments for the safety of our children? Because I'm up here, this is my first Board of Ed meeting, but I'm a union representative. I represent 1.3 million people. A lot of them live in Suffolk County, and a lot of them live in our school district. So if you could answer me, what are we doing working with the police department and outside agencies to prevent these people that are loitering in front of our schools, that are, for lack of better terms, hawking our children?
We can get you a response. Superintendent could actually reach out to you tomorrow or the following day, just to give you a detailed explanation as to what's going on. But we are working with Suffolk County Police Department very closely. We're working with the District Attorney's Office very closely to provide services and support to make our schools safer. That's one of the things that we're doing.
Thank you. I mean, I'll wait. If you have my information, I'll wait, but I think that there's other people here. There's people that I know, my neighbors, that would really like an answer, because, everything's out there on social media. There's a lot of worry out there. There's people staring at kids, young girls through fences, right? And we can't have this going on without having some rock solid answers.
Mr. Perone, I'm happy to speak with you. You can contact my office. I will speak to that, because this is public comment, so we allow people to comment. It's not necessarily public back and forth, but I understand your concern. And as I mentioned before, as what happened in particular at Cayuga, unfortunately, but we had a complete police response. Again, I spoke to the inspector. I spoke to the commissioner of Suffolk County Police Department. I spoke to the chief of staff at the DA's office. So we have liaisons with all of these groups. If you hear of that, if someone is staring through a fence at our kids, if someone is on our property, if someone is lurking, if someone is hanging about, our security needs to know about it, and we will respond, and we will respond immediately, and we will respond with the PD support as well. So that's just a specific, more of a blanket statement, but if there's anything in particular that's concerning you or any member of the community, certainly can reach out to me.
I will do.
Thank you.
I appreciate it.
Of course.
Thank you, Mr. Byrne. Chris Buckley Jr.
Good evening, board members. I wanted to know if there was a possibility that we could form a security committee formed of, I guess, the community members to talk about a lot of these things that you guys were touching on about security in the schools. So the committee would not only talk about armed security, which is something that a lot of people have brought up, but other avenues like electronic shot detection, cameras with artificial intelligence, and also the bulletproof front vestibules and other security enhancements in the district.
Once again, I mean, what I would do is I'll have the superintendent contact you. You know, the issue we have with committees with regards to security, Chris, is that, you know, some of the stuff we don't want out in the community, and having a committee of community members would actually divulge that information and make our schools less safe. So, by all means, like I said, you know, I could have the superintendent reach out to you and discuss it further with you. But you know, there is going to be some discussion around what you're requesting with regard to the board.
Can I just ask, Patty, you chair what is it that you chair exactly, and who's on that?
I chair the school-wide safety committee, and that has administration, teachers, other staff members on that as well. But we don't. That's one of the committees that doesn't have community members on it for those reasons that Mr. Scavo spoke about.
But we could certainly have a conversation around some of those ideas that you have that we can bring back to the board, perhaps.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Buckley.
Kristen Dukas.
Good evening, everyone. Something that stood out to me about the Tennessee tragedy is that the shooter didn't go to the first targeted location because of too much security. So I think that in itself says a lot. That being said, I'm for trained armed guards, and I believe it can be done in a specific way so that there's a middle ground. I feel like the concerns that I hear about not turning I feel like the concerns I hear about not turning the school into a prison and students possibly being able to obtain the security guard's gun. I feel like people like to paint a picture of these security guards that would stand outside school grounds outwardly holding assault weapons. And that's scary and intimidating, and I wouldn't want my kids to see something like that at their school. Instead, I feel like the guard would be able to conceal carry so it's not visible. Nobody would know it's on their body or where it is. Think of everyday citizens that you come into contact with that may conceal carry and you have no idea. Also, the guard would be dressed as all other Sachem security. They wouldn't stand out in any way. They would remain outside patrolling the grounds and the perimeter and would not be permitted indoors unless a true emergency. So they wouldn't be inside, they wouldn't be walking the halls or breaking up fights, and that could resolve the concern that a student can easily try to get a hold of the gun. If they have to go to the bathroom, they can call another guard to take over their spot. The gun stays outside with that guard, and under normal circumstances, it doesn't ever come into the school, so it can't accidentally be forgotten on the sink or something like that. After the incident at Cayuga, uniformed police were posted at the school. Does having an armed officer at the school when there's a potential threat make parents feel safer or give everyone a sense of security? If the answer is yes, and a uniformed officer with a visible gun is acceptable to people, even after they've found out that the situation was deemed to not be a threat, then what is the difference with always having a guard in Sachem security uniform, concealed carrying, and patrolling school perimeters? The police and administration said that there was no threat right now, but out of an abundance of caution, the police were still up at the school every single day this week. So I didn't hear of any parents trying to send the police away. They must have been okay with the extra protection even days later. Why do we have to wait until there are threats or, God forbid, something serious happens? Let's take the extra necessary measures to keep our kids safe. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Ms. Susan. Cheryl O'Neill Falco.
Hello, everyone. Okay, let's see. Good evening, board members. I come to you tonight in the hopes of starting a security committee. This committee can evaluate all means of security to add more layers of protection to protect our children, as in trained armed guards and other security measures. I understand that not everyone is on board with that idea of trained armed guards, and I respect that. But I also know that school districts such as Broward County, where the Parkland school tragedy occurred, have added armed guards since. It is a fact that shooters most always choose a soft target. Anywhere that has a sign that says gun-free zone is a soft target. A few of the surrounding school districts have already implemented armed security. And if you went to one of these schools, you would never even know that they were carrying. I've spoken to many parents that have reached out to me in support of this. And after the recent tragedies in Tennessee and what happened at Cayuga, we as a community feel that there is no better time than now for this. Also, I have a daughter who is a senior, and she said if she forgets her ID, she's not permitted to go in the one door. She has to go in the front door. When she gets to that front door, she is just sent into the building. Nobody says anything to her. And she also brought to my attention that, yes, all the kids are trained to hide, but she also said that kids that do school shootings usually just graduated. So they know every single thing that these kids are taught, where they will be hidden, and how to get around it. There has to be something that we can do. I'm not saying armed guards are the end all, because I know that that is not 100% guarantee that nothing will ever happen, but there has to be a layer. We need layers upon layers. You know, we protect so many people in this country with armed guards, and I just cannot wrap my head around why. You know, and somebody had said something about calling the school. A friend of mine called Cayuga the other day, and they said that kid was never on the property. I saw him there with my own eyes. He was fighting with a woman in her car, and a father approached him, and that's when he left. The security guards were standing there. Everybody saw him. So I don't know. I think my concern isn't so much, of course, there will be crazy people in the world, but why, as parents, are we being lied to about what is happening when our kids are in a building? Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Falco. I just want to make one comment, one statement. You know, over the last 2 weeks, the Board of Education has gotten quite a few emails, you know, for requests for armed security, and it's something, you know, that obviously is becoming more popular within school districts in the last, you know, in the recent years. This board, I'm going to tell you right now, is at the end of this agenda, there's a section for future discussion items. And I'm confident that there's going to be a request for future discussion items to look at the feasibility, okay, as well as the cost and needs assessment, okay, for armed security, where we would then charge the superintendent with coming back with information and then looking at, you know, different protocols and timeframes in which these local school districts have implemented that same type of armed security. Smithtown, Hall Park, and a few other on Long Island. I think South Huntington also did it. So I'm pretty sure, based upon the email requests that we've received over the last week and a half, I'm pretty sure a request is going to be made tonight for that. So if you stick around to the end of the meeting, you'll probably see it. And then we'll actually look into that as part of our security enhancement, whether or not, the board wants to continue to pursue that and what the cost would be.
Rob, just one comment. So with that said, if you can just please remind the community, this is probably not a conversation we're going to have a lot of in public, right? Just because of the nature of what we're talking about. But I think it's important to know that we most likely will go down that path, but a lot of that's got to be happening in exec session, right? I've spoken to board members from other districts who implemented, and that was the direction they took, just because of the nature of, the sensitivity around this topic, right?
Mr. Scarborough, I'm sorry. I just have to say something. Just Miss O'Neill Falco, sir, if you're still here, I'm not sure. Please feel free to reach out to me. I just want to correct one thing. That person was not on school property. So I know you said that we were lying, but let's have a conversation about that, because I have the principal and our security there. He wasn't on school property. He was out front, near, but not on. So there is a difference there. Yep. There's a sidewalk. People are permitted to walk there, but I will just say that I don't want to be seen as, lying to the community. So we could definitely discuss that. Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you.
We do have a comment section at the end. It brings us to item 3, business items. We have a consent agenda A through F. I need a motion, please. And Ms. Volpe, did you have your hand up? Meredith. Second by Ms. Isernia. Questions or discussions? All in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried. Item 4, we have personnel, teachers, consent agenda A through L. I need a motion, please. All right, Ms. Stephanie Volpe, second. Ms. Isernia. Questions or discussions? All in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried.
Heather Kabarik, are you in the audience tonight in person? There you are. Okay, so this evening, the Board of Education approved your tenure appointment. We'd like to congratulate you on all your hard work and dedication over the last 4+ years and being an integral part of the staff and community. You served many leaves before you became probationary, and congratulations on your tenure.
Item 5 is personnel. For support staff, we have a consent agenda A through G. Any motion, please? Ms. Meredith Volpe. Second, Mr. Vinnie Reynolds. Questions or discussions? All in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried.
We'd also like to recognize someone in the front row, Terry Chavarro. Terry, can you just raise your hand for a sec to let folks see you there? Terry, we had a small meeting with her this morning to kind of talk about some of the great things over the course of the year. She's been with us for 16.5 years. Her most recent position has been in security, where she's retiring from the district. But before that, she was a part-time clerical and in a lot of different offices across the district, including central registration, as one of those faces that folks, parents, community members, and students see as they're coming in to our district. So we'd like to thank you for all your years of service and congratulate you on your retirement.
Okay, brings us to item 6, personnel for administrators. I need a motion, please. Ms. Isernia, second. Ms. McGraw. Okay, questions or discussions? All in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried.
Okay, joining us this evening in our audience are 2 of our 3 administrators who will be retiring at the end of the school year. We'd like to take a moment to just say a few words about these folks in their leadership positions and the time, dedication, and just sheer compassion over the course of the years that they've made sure to make an impact with students over the years. Now, not with us today is Jose Cruz. He's an assistant principal who's over at High School North. Jose joined us in 1997. He has been an integral part of all sorts of activities over the course of the years. For those of you who have had the involvement with the Fathers Club over elementary into high school, he was one of those folks who was actively involved in that. Festival of Trees and Lights. If there's something that needs to get done for kids in the buildings, for students, for the community, he's your man. So we'd like to thank him for everything that he's done over the years. I look forward to his continued work as he spends his time in the next few months with us before retirement. We also have joining us today a leadership team over at Sagamore. We have Donna Gregory, who actually was here earlier in employment and came back in 2006 and joined the administrative team here as an assistant principal, where she worked at Sequoia Middle School. Actually, I joined the same year, and so did Patty Trinbetta, so we have a little trifecta going on here. She is, a compassionate leader who's there for students each and every day. She came with Frank Panassi when Frank Panassi moved from the Sequoia building as a principal to Sagamore. Frank joined us in 2007. He's a man of science, so we have a math science team over there, and we want to thank Frank and his team, and also recognize his wife is in the audience tonight. Thank you for all of your years of service. We again will do something at the end for all of our retirees at the end of the year, but just want to say thanks for everything, guys. Congratulations.
I just want to add, Frank and Donna, going to be impossible to replace Mr. Cruz, as well as I said to Kristen the other day, who's going to do everything, right? I mean, Mr. Cruz does so many things for us at North, and then the great work that our team at Sagamore does as well. Very proud of them, and very happy that they're going to go on to this next stage. And we'll be talking as we move forward to make sure that we get great people in their place. But thank you so much for your many years of service. Nice to meet you. I'll come down and shake your hand later, right? And Donna, good to see you. And just thank you so much all for all you've done for the Sachem family. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Item 7 is contracts. We've consent agenda A through W. Any motion, please? Mr. Reynolds, second by Ms. Isernia. Any questions or discussions on any of those items, contracts? All in favor? Opposed?
I'm going to be a no.
Uh,
No on the
Opposed?
whole
One
section.
opposition? Okay. All right. Okay, so we have, okay, motion is moved. Item 8 is policy adoption, okay, for new policy. It's the second reading for 8625, student, teacher, and principal privacy. Any motion, please? Okay, Ms. Pickowitz, second. Ms. Isernia, questions or discussions? Okay, Chris, before we vote on it, could you just reiterate what this policy is and just as a reminder?
This policy was in response to a
Bless you.
survey that went out to our students prior to parent review or input. And we are going to make sure that surveys going forward, and there's copies of the policy. Where can people get copies of the policy, Allison? Can I get it online at this time? Okay.
Yeah, you can definitely visit our website under Board of Education, scroll down to policies, and they will all come up.
So we want to make sure that we get, again, community input on those policy, on anything such as a survey of our youngsters. So we made a minor change. At one point in there, it said minors, and now we changed it to students. So we wanted to make sure that it captures all of our students in our schools. And that's the change that we made for this particular meeting.
Okay. So, Ms. Reynolds?
Chris, just have a question. I think in the policy, was there something that has, on an annual basis, parents or students would have to acknowledge the policy? I thought I read that. Hold on. Let's look at my notes.
It may be advised of the policy.
Yeah, my question then is, if we're asking parents or students to acknowledge the policy, is there a way to have this teachers or the staff acknowledge the policy on an annual basis as well, so we don't have things being released without adhering to the policy? It's sort of a check and balance against things sort of getting out there versus acknowledging, hey, we have a policy in place that you need consent, things like that. So,
Okay. So Chris and Allison, if you don't mind, we'll just put our heads together, the three of us, and review exactly what you're talking
Yeah,
about.
okay.
And if in fact it is there or not, we could talk about trying to put it in the teacher handbook as well, which is something that they see and review and
at
acknowledge.
least they're
that they
aware
have
of
each
it's
year.
out there. They say, okay, we can't get this survey. We need to go through the channels to get approval or consent, right? So
Got
just
it.
covering bases. Okay, thank you.
Okay, so I have a motion and a second. Okay, all in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Item 9, action items, approval of the impartial hearing officer of student made known to the Board of Education. A motion, please. Mr. Reynolds, second by Ms. Volpe. Okay, that's Meredith Volpe. All right. Any questions or discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Item 10, we have a consent agenda through A through C. It's donations from our PTAs. Any motion, please? Okay, Ms. Stephanie Volpe, second by Ms. Pikowitz. Questions or discussion? Ms. Esterni? It's already second. Yeah. That's the last one's Eagle Scouts. My apologies. I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Item 11 is Committee on Special Education. We have consent agenda A through B. Any motion, please? Ms. Esterni, second by Ms. Stephanie Volpe. Questions or discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried. Item 12 is monthly reports. Any updates to the board? Ms. Stephanie Volpe?
The legislative committee, we saw at the last meeting what was going forward with that. Also the part B of the legislative committee, we put on hold because the co-chair needed some time. I don't know if you saw the email, but that's the only update.
Okay. And you're talking about the legislative forum, and we'll know soon whether or not we're able to pull it off by the.
She wants to reschedule after the break.
Okay.
So I don't know the date of the
Okay.
forum, if that's going to move, but the meeting that was supposed to be tomorrow,
Okay.
she wants to move.
Okay. Any other updates? Budget
Just a-
advisory?
Just a quick update. So the Budget Advisory Committee will meet again tomorrow night. That'll be our last meeting before the budget adoption. And as I mentioned before, they'll be here at the next meeting to present their recommendations and findings. So just share that. Okay.
Okay. Any other? Mr. Attorney?
Yeah, Rob, just the audit committee met last night. We were there with Michelle and Ron Sachs, myself, Mrs. Roberts, Mrs. Roden, and others. And I won't go into any detail because you're going to see this report, but just to let you know, they did cover food service and asset tracking. Okay. And Mr. Hoffman announced that he will be retiring at the end of the year. So we're going to be, he's going to stay with us on board for the rest of the year, and then he's going to transition over. So we were happy for him, but he's been with us, I think, 12 years, he said, right? Michelle, 12 or 13 years or something like that. So
Mr. Hoppins has been telling me for the last 3 years he's retiring. So
Yeah, I hope we
hopefully-
can talk him out of it again.
Yeah.
What a great resource, right?
So we'll get the details later. There's nothing of urgency. So.
Okay. Any other updates, committees? Okay. Okay. We have a closing public comment for committee members. Any? Okay. Ms. Covington?
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
So my family and I, my name is Cindy Covington, and my family and I are fairly new to the St. Jim district. And the concern that I have is, so since I've moved here, what I've seen is that the climate is changing as far as the diversity of the families that are moving into the district. But what is not changing is the diversity of faculty and admin within the district. What I want to know, I see that you all are going to start another hiring process. What are you doing or implementing to try to hire minorities so that children of every ethnicity has some type of representation to where they all can feel comfortable and like they belong?
Just real briefly, I mean, Chris and I put you on the spot, but just if you could just very briefly talk about how or what we do with the fairs and things like that.
Sure. So many of you may or may not be aware of the BOCES Career Fair, which has been in existence. It's a diversity fair that's been in existence for, I'd say, at least 25 years. I know I personally was at that when I was in the Bayshore schools. We've participated in that through the Sachem schools, which is when the Eastern Suffolk BOCES education facility collaborates with local organizations for diverse candidates, whether it's having to do with any of the criteria about diversity in staff. This year, about not last weekend, but the weekend before, I participated in that with an administrative team of, I believe, 8 administrators across the district, taking a look and interviewing candidates from diverse backgrounds for positions that we are looking to fill. That's one of the things that we do each year as a method to try and make sure that we are finding the best candidate for each of the positions as we go through.
Okay, I would just like to, it's a big concern. It's not just myself that I'm speaking for. I'm speaking for other families that are afraid to stand up here and speak for themselves. I am speaking for the families that are to come, because there has to be change within the St. James School District. There is no sign of diversity. The children, the minority children, don't feel like they belong. They are looking to bring their own clubs into existence. It gets turned down. They are looking for places to where they can call something that they feel that they want to do, that may not be sports, that may be something that someone else that is not a minority may be interested in as well, but it's just not offered. It's just that if it's sports, then that's what it is. The children of all backgrounds should feel like they belong in St. James, and right now they do not. And then my next concern is the curriculum. It is very, very outdated. Who is in charge of curriculum, and what are you doing to update the curriculum? Because a lot of the verbiage in your curriculum at this point is very offensive. It's not appropriate. And the age group, my daughter had a book, The Contender. That book should have been sent home with a consent form. The verbiage utilized in that book was so offensive and degrading, basically, that I sent the teacher an email that book should have been sent home with a consent form, and my child is to no longer read that book, because to a person of color, it was beyond unacceptable. And not only that, it was for a young adult. 14-year-olds are not considered young adults. So what are we doing to make sure that the literature that is given to the children is appropriate, and that they are able to basically understand that the verbiage that is utilized in there cannot be utilized freely?
Yeah, Ms. Covington, we're going to continue to work on it. We do have curriculum councils. We do review material on a regular basis. But any questions you have, certainly reach out to Superintendent or, even myself. And certainly I'd be more than happy to talk to you. Thank you so much for coming out. Michelle Farrar.
Buddy, you all know me. I would like to say thank you to all of you who just spoke. I literally have been talking about this issue. My son is African American, and I've been talking about this since I spoke to Mr. Nolan and Dr. Muriaro for over 13 years. My son has never had a non-white teacher, substitute teacher, administrator, guidance counselor, you name it, never. I've brought up this again, 13 years. I've been on the curriculum council for many years. Nothing changed. I actually, when my son was in middle school, I asked, can we start teaching about Red Wing and how African Americans contributed to that World War II? Nothing changed. I brought up, can we bring August Wilson plays into the high school? What my son literally came home one day and said to me, and I know I've even emailed many of you about this, when am I going to learn? Why do I have to keep reading about Black and brown boys who are either poor, uneducated, or slaves? When are they the heroes of the story? Why do they always have to be saved by some white person? And you know what? I was told by one of your own staff members at a curriculum council meeting, direct to my face, change takes time. That is the response I got. Change takes time. I've literally been talking about this for 13 years, and I've not seen any change. And I think it's amazing that you guys all stood up as a group to talk about this, and we need more. I'd love you guys to ask how many African-American voices are on the diversity task force, because I helped to start that, and I was not allowed on it again. So, because they don't like when I speak. So I think it's great, and I would love to see how our curriculum is going to change and how we're going to start to bring in African-American authors and not just quote Martin Luther King during the month of February. Thank you.
Item 14, board discussion items. Any discussion item, future discussion, excuse me, board discussion items. So there's a couple things on there. I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Pelletieri to present these.
Certainly, thank you. The Board of Ed security training resolution, do we have copies of that? So I know we wanted to speak to this from our last meeting together because we are in a new stage. Mr. Iserni, I think you helped out with this?
Yeah, if I could, as a reminder to ourselves and the community, on July 27th of this year, the board unanimously passed a resolution in support of asking the state, both the Commissioner of Ed and the Department of State, to implement a specialized licensure or training requirement that was school specific to school security, tactics, de-escalation, that would be part of a licensed program, or either as an endorsement or a credential, that when people wanted to work as security in school districts, they would have to also not only have the state license, but the license would also have to be either endorsed or have this extra credential of school-specific training. We also did charge our legislative committee with helping to push that into the legislature. And I think for those who were here, I think it was the last meeting, Mr. Kiernan was here, and he has, through his legislative committee, his efforts, they do have a state Senate bill, 4559, and a companion assembly bill, A5903. I just did that from memory, but I think it's right. And they're entitled the School Security Guard Training Enhancement Act. And when we spoke last, we agreed that we would, reaffirm our resolution of the 27th of July, and also at the same time now put our full support behind the passage of these two bills. So I drafted this resolution. I'm sorry it wasn't in the packet, but we'll get it up on in the agenda when it's passed, that not only puts our full support behind it, but also then calls upon all our fellow school boards across the state to join on with resolutions and support as well to try to get this passed. So that's the resolution. So I would make a motion that we vote on the resolution if we can. We'll get a second, and like Mr. Scavo, you'd have to read it into the record, I guess.
Yes, I can read it to the record so that it's reflected at this meeting.
So I'll make a motion first. And
well, why don't we read
Oh,
it
you want to
first?
read it first? Okay, I'm
Let's
sorry. Read it first.
So this would obviously a motion we made second, and then we would approve support of these two particular bills. A letter would be formed, okay, and signed by the Board of Education, okay, so that our local senators and assemblymen that are behind these bills would understand and see that the Sachem School District does support specific.
You're going to read the
I'm gonna
resolution.
read-
It's going to say to send letters to the state ed, the commissioner, the Department of State, also to all the elected officials, Senate and the Assembly, and to the extent practical, if Allison can email copies to her fellow district clerks across the state, asking for their support as well. I think the more people that get behind this, the better.
Okay, so the amended.
Before you read, so Mike, in essence, you just restated what we already approved, but got very specific about the two bills, right?
Correct. You'll
Okay.
see that he's going to read it.
Yeah,
That
I've read
we'll
it, so
reaffirm
that's
what we
reaffirmed. Okay.
passed, and then
Okay, so the amended resolution reads, whereas the Board of Education of the Sachem Central School District located at Ronkonkoma, New York, did on July 27, 2022, unanimously pass a resolution calling on the New York State Commission of Education, New York State Secretary of State, and elected officials with districts located within the boundaries of the Sachem Central School District to add and amend the laws, rules, and regulations of the state and or the department to include as a mandatory prerequisite to being employed by a school district in the state of New York as a licensed security guard. That said, individuals receive as part of their training and licensure a separate and specific credential or endorsement signifying training and knowledge of the laws, rules, and regulations applicable to school districts together, which means tactics and the manner of providing security services to schools within the state of New York. Now, therefore, the Board of Education of the Sachem Central School District does fully and completely reaffirm the resolution of July 27, 2022. It's in entirety, and be it further resolved that the Board of Education of the Sachem Central School District does now proclaim its full support and endorsement of the current New York State Senate Bill S4559, sponsored by Senator Martinez, and the New York State Assembly Companion Bill A5903, sponsored by the member of the Assembly, Jean-Pierre, also known as the School Security Guard Training Enactment Act, that if enacted into the law requires school security guards to receive and be required to obtain a specialized school-specific security training prayed for in resolution of July 27, 2022. Be it further resolved that the Board of Education of the Sachem Central School District does now call upon all of our fellow boards of education across the state of New York, as well as every state elected official, to join the Board of Education of the Sachem Central School District in its support for the passage of this School Security Guard Training Enactment Act. Now, therefore, the district clerk shall, upon approval of this resolution, transmit via certified mail a true copy of the above resolution, along with a copy of the resolution from July 27th, 2022, to the Governor of the State of New York, the Commissioner of Education of the State of New York, and the Secretary of State, and via regular mail to all members of the New York State Senate, all members of the New York State Assembly, and Executive Director of the New York State School Board Association. In addition, and to the extent practical, the district clerk shall transmit via email a copy of the resolution, along with a copy of the resolution of July 27, 2022, to each and every district clerk across New York State. All right, so I need a motion. Okay.
Can I just,
Yeah, I had a question. Go ahead.
Let's do the motion second, then we'll.
Okay.
I need a motion. All right, Ms. Volpe, second by Mr. Reynolds. All right, discussion or questions? All right,
just
Mr.
quickly,
Grillo?
I could be reading it wrong, but on the fourth line, I think that's supposed to say in the state of New York, in the boundaries of the state of New York, not the boundaries of Sachem.
Mike, excuse you could just turn your microphone on.
The one of July 27th did just say the boundaries of the Sachem
Okay,
Central
maybe
School
I'm reading it wrong. It just seems like if we want to call upon all elected officials, it wouldn't be just the ones in the boundaries of our district. It would be,
Yeah, but at that time, we only called on our own.
Oh.
So that's why it says that the one of July 27th only called on their own. Now, this one is now calling upon all.
okay, I see it. Okay, thank
So,
you.
Rob,
Mr. Reynolds?
So just Chris Venator, this was written by Mike, right, who's an attorney, but you're good with this resolution? You've looked at it? You're,
Yes, I have.
okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
I just want to make sure.
Are you guys confirming that now? Okay, all right, so we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion's passed unanimously.
Nice job.
Thank you very much. This next part refers to summer school. We're going to talk about summer school 2023. A couple pieces here. We have run summer enrichment for our K through 6 youngsters for free for the past 2 years. This year, unfortunately, there is a cost associated with that. It is not an exorbitant cost, $95 per week. There's 3 weeks that you could sign up for, so you could go to all 3 of these. This email will go out to the school community. They'll see all the great enrichment activities we're going to have. It's going to be a lot of fun this summer: STEAM, robotics, coding, rocketry, culinary arts, sports, academics, Broadway theater, painting, pottery, all types of programs. It'll either be at Nokomis or at Hiawatha. But I just want to bring it to the board's attention that we are going to start to charge for this. And if next year we have this again, the grants will be fully gone and we'd have to start to charge to make it run even. So I'm bringing that to the board's attention. I don't know if there's any discussion around that. Obviously, if people are free or reduced lunch, there are opportunities for them to get what we might call scholarship into the program.
And so this doesn't require a formal vote. Does anybody have any opposition to the summer camp for our students? Okay, so go, Chris.
Comment?
I was just going to say, it's $6 an hour for great value. There's tremendous what you guys are providing here. So it's
Yeah,
it's
kids have
really
had a
good.
great time over
Comes
the
out to
past few
$6
years.
an hour, and I think it's well worth it. So yeah.
Thank you for doing that math. At 7 through 12, we are going to have a credit recovery program that will be at East High School. And here's where we really need to have a discussion. We have some students that are really struggling in our middle schools. In 7th grade and in particular 8th grade, they're failing 2 or more subjects, course subjects. And one of the requests we have from our administrators in those buildings, and teachers supported as well, is that students should be mandated to go to summer school and not just promoted ahead. I know we've had that in the past few years, not past few years, many years. Kids in 7th grade, kids in 8th grade, pass or fail, they move forward. There seems to be a sense that that's going to happen. So I'm not going to work hard, and I'm just going to show up in 9th grade and move forward. And those kids are struggling mightily, especially since COVID. So the push is now that we would mandate kids in 7th grade, right, Patty, and 8th grade. There could be some discussion around whether not 6th.
We'd be offering this for 6th, 7th, and 8th in middle school. for students failing 2 or more core subjects.
Okay. So that's the discussion there and debate. And then because we're mandating it as a school, we cannot charge students for that, and we would take on that cost. So that's kind of what's open to the board in terms of discussion. We're going to mandate for kids. It could be, I'll give you some debate right now. It's April, right? It's April 5th, and now we're going to tell people that they're mandated to attend summer school. So that's something we have to think about. Is it something that we implement perhaps in 8th grade, and then next year, because we have a full year of understanding for parents, the community, and kids, that if you fail 2 or more in 6th, 7th, and 8th, then you're going to have to go to summer school. And if you don't, you're going to stay in that grade. You're not going to be moved forward. And there are implications for that as well in terms of budgetary implications, because now you have to run those courses over again. So you have to be really thoughtful about those decisions that we make.
All right. Questions from the board? Mr. Picarella?
I think it would be good for everybody to attend. My concern would be transportation.
Yep.
How would we get around that?
Yeah, we don't have summer school transportation. So that is a great question in terms of if we're going to mandate transportation. I'm going to look at both our attorneys here, but technically Mr. Venator. But
well, a couple of things. Number one, you can't mandate summer school. You could say the alternative is if you don't attend summer
Yeah.
school, but
You're gonna
if a
repeat.
kid or a family says, we're not going to attend, you can't make them attend. But
Well-
you can say, if you choose that option, then you're going to have to repeat the prior grade.
yeah, no, I understand. I can't go to the house and
Yes,
bring them there.
yes. We can't require it and say you have to do it or you
Mhm.
as a condition of attending school the next
But
year.
we don't have to provide transportation, correct?
We typically don't provide transportation for students
Yep.
who are attending
Mhm.
summer school.
Mr. Pickowitz?
Have we ever done this before in Sachem? I mean, I know we had the COVID time. We've never required students to
Did
go
we
to
used
summer
to,
school for
Patty?
failed programs.
Yeah. Yes, we used to do this for 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. We would offer it for our students failing 2 or more core subjects. Again, like Dr. Pelletieri said, we'd take a look at more of our 8th graders about retaining them in the middle school, because we wouldn't want to retain, you wouldn't be retaining all 3 years. But we did offer this, and
Did we stop
utilized
because
it
of COVID or prior to that?
before COVID.
And what was the reason for stopping it then?
I think financially.
Financially. Okay.
Any other questions? Meredith?
So unfortunately, I did get left back in 8th grade. And let me tell you, it stinks not going to high school with your friends. I struggled tremendously in school. So when did we stop that? I feel like when I was a kid, people did get left back. And then all of a sudden we went into this where everybody just gets pushed forward regardless of their capabilities. And then you have a bunch of kids that, and again, I dropped out of high school, get a bunch of kids that drop out because they are so far behind that there is just no way to catch up. So where did we stop this whole, there has to be consequences. If you can't make it and finish the curriculum, you shouldn't just be pushed forward. And then it also shouldn't be on your district to continue to pay the fees to get you, mine was a lot of struggle, but it was also a lot of, I could have done better on my own.
Well, it's certainly incumbent upon us to support our students in the elementary schools and the middle school to give them the support that they need if they are struggling. We don't turn our back on anyone. So obviously we have AIS, academic support, and we have extra periods of English now, math at the middle school level. Those are the core subject areas where we have additional support. But there is concern around, just look at this example, Meredith, and you've said this to the public. You just said it again now. You struggled in 8th grade, got left behind, and then ended up struggling every year after that. And that's something we really have to consider, obviously, as a school community. Are we going to, I'm not a big fan of retention, especially at the elementary levels. And now you're going to have some big 8th graders walking around with little 6th graders, and they're 2 years. And we really need to think about those pieces. But this is kind of the start of that conversation. But it is certainly incumbent upon us to continue to support our kids and not just our diploma. I've said this many times, needs to mean something. It can't be a piece of paper that says, go ahead out in the world now. It has to be college and career ready. That's what that diploma needs to mean.
Stephanie?
I know that community members, because I'm an older mom, have been asking for summer school for a while, that the kids that struggle really do need the support. And a lot of them don't send their children to other school districts because their kids wouldn't be comfortable going to another school district for summer school.
That's one of the things we did was we put kids out to other schools. We said, okay, you need summer school and you can go to this place or this place to register.
This has been a long requested service.
Chris, are we offering summer school at the high school level again?
Yes, 7 through 12.
We are doing 7 through 12?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, regardless of what we decide, we're going to offer it. It's just a matter of whether we're going to, draw a line in the sand and say, okay, we're going to.
How is that
mandate,
being
but
funded right now? Is it within the budget or are we using COVID monies?
That's within the budget.
It's within the budget. So the middle school, summer school, how would that be funded this year? Would that be through COVID?
7 through 12. Michelle,
So the summer school is through the COVID money still. It's through the grant money.
It's still through the grant money.
Mhm.
do
And we
know-
have that in for this summer as well.
So do we know what the cost that it is? So that when that grant runs out, we would need the budget?
We can get that information.
what happened to your microphone, Michelle?
Patty
Oh,
took it.
are we short one?
Yeah, it's Meredith, to answer your question
sorry.
about.
We're
how
helping the budget.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I missed what you said.
I said we're helping the budget.
Oh, okay. The way it happened was a few years back, we had a board member that brought up the point that this individual board member felt that summer school was being abused, that kids were not working as hard during the school year so that they can actually do remedial over the summer because it was easier. It was easier for them. It's an argument that I made that was not true. Kids do struggle academically throughout the year, and they need that support services. What allowed it to go away was the fact that we ended up having a fiscal crisis, and it made it easy for that particular board member to get that removed. And unfortunately, when you lose things in a budget, it's very hard to get it back. If we were to lose transportation, it'd be impossible to get it back. And that was one of those things that fell by the wayside because of the fiscal condition the district was in. So.
But it's not like mandated by the state. Like if you fail 2 core subjects, it's not mandated by the state that you somehow have to.
No, we make that determination.
So, once they get up to the high school, is there an opportunity for them to kind of maybe take some of those middle school classes in the high school schedule and catch up there, right? Just something to look at. With the 9th period day, maybe there's an opportunity to kind of do some of that remedial or 8th grade work in 9th grade or sort of in parallel.
So some of the things we do
Just
is
a thought.
provide support classes.
Yeah.
That's where it would be. It would not be, I'm in 9th algebra and I'll take 8th grade, something like that. We would not be able to do that, but we would provide supports to help people get caught up without a doubt. That is what we would attempt to do, obviously.
Mr. Cerny?
So Chris, I guess conceptually what we're wrestling with here is that we're saying if the student is failing 2 core courses, they're basically going to get a choice. Either you're going to go to summer school or you're going to repeat the grade you just finished. That's what we're wrestling with. And fundamentally, I'm not opposed to that because I think that that's the way it was when we were in school here. But what I would get concerned with is that I don't want the person or the parents of the student to be surprised that this is going to become a choice. I want to make sure that we're providing, we want to make sure we're providing the support they might need as their teachers see them struggling, so that their final failure is not the result of a good effort on their part with us helping them. So that, the parents, maybe around halfway through the school year is appraised that their child is struggling in these areas. And, we're going to provide this extra support, but understand that if they do fail, we're going to require them either go to summer school or repeat the grade. I just don't want it to be a surprise on June 15th,
Yeah, it reminds me of my old principal days. No failure can be a surprise. We cannot wait for the report card for a parent to know that a child is struggling. It is incumbent upon us to make sure that we are notifying them. And that is something, Patty, we could actually put in place where a counselor form, letter, something goes out that says your child is in danger of having to take summer school or be held back. That's something we could put into place. I'm sure we probably had it at some point.
Well, only because if you wait too long, they never have a chance. Maybe they want to employ an outside service, right? So if you don't tell them to the last minute, they never have a chance to rectify
That
it.
could be an argument why this year, because we have the funds in the grant, we don't hold kids back necessarily because we haven't told them or prepared them for this till tonight, even if they're watching. But we encourage them strongly to go this year, but next year, when it is going to be something that has to be part of the general budget to do, we give them that year's worth of understanding that this is the year you're mandated, for lack of a better word. Sorry, Chris.
I would just like to set a boundary, like at the
Required.
end of the second period, if we see they're really struggling, that now we're going to start talking to them about the possibility of this, right? That you just want to make sure there's no surprises.
Yeah, we can build that in.
Any other questions or comments? Ms. Volpe?
Just to kind of piggyback on that, I'm a big Sachem cheerleader, but I will tell you personally, I know of a child that this past year did not know on Tuesday if he was graduating on Friday. That's hard. And we're not very good at that as a district. I've gotten many phone calls personally when the report card was about to come out to tell me what was going on. And yes, we have parent portal and we can do that. But I do feel like that is something we definitely need to get better at. And if our children are we know if our children are struggling, but there are many of us who cannot help our struggling children. So those letters have to be essential. They have to go out. We have to do better at that because there's a lot of parents out there that can't help their children with schooling.
You raised a good point. The parent portal is there, but our data tells us that not everyone, it's a lot more than not everyone are going in and seeing that information. So yes, it certainly would be something that we would have to send out. And I think that's a good idea. We'll actually go back and look at what we used to do, but that doesn't mean we're going to do it. We have to do something, always look to improve. And so something at the second market period at mid-year that might go home, notifying folks that they're in danger of that would be something that we really should take a look at.
We also do send out DCA letters notifying parents that their child's at the high school level is in danger of not receiving that credit, which could endanger them graduating or, meeting their graduation requirements.
Patty, what's a DCA? What's a DCA letter?
Denied credit audit. So that's letting parents know that if their child doesn't do their work and start attending and doing better, that they might be denied that credit at the high school.
And I'm hoping that the way that we're going to notify parents, like we have to really notify the parents, not to sound like a delinquent, but there were many letters that came home. I got the mail before my parents did. So we have to make sure that that parents are really well aware. Some can't use a parent portal. Some don't email. Some don't get their mail before their kids do. We have to make sure that the parents
Yeah, we
know.
could layer the approach, right, with a letter and an email.
And phone calls.
Ms. Pikowitz, and then I'm going to back to Stephanie.
I'm just going to reiterate with that, with definitely reaching out to the parents. I know I've spent probably the last 3-4 weeks with my team reaching out to parents to let them know that their child is in danger of failing for the year and what we can offer them, to get them to pass, get the support they need, etc. And I do know that the guidance support team also reach out to them quarterly, and I'm in the middle school, quarterly, to let them know that you have failed 2 subjects. This is what your running average is in math. That we need to A, give them supports, and B, let you know that summer school could be a possibility if, we don't approve the grades, the homework, the attendance, whatever is causing that child to not reach their true potential. I personally think that we should be requiring, I know core subjects, but especially math and ELA, those are foundational subjects. First of all, reading, reading is the foundation of every single subject. So the students need to be able to read, comprehend, inference in every subject, including the sciences. And math, I always tell my students, I teach middle school math, we're building a brick wall in math. If you have bricks that are missing, eventually it's going to collapse. You're not going to be able to build that wall. So we together have to work to fill in those bricks to make sure that you have that strong wall that you could get to whatever your path is leading to. So I definitely think ELA and math, I don't want to say those are the better subjects, but those are the foundationals. If I say to students, if you're not successful right now in 6th grade, when you go to 7th grade, you're going to struggle if you haven't mastered fractions or this concept. If you don't know what perimeter area is, wait till you put algebra into it where you have to combine like terms. So I would really like to see that those subjects that are foundational so that that child always gets success, they're not constantly feeling failure in math year to year to year, that we can catch it before it gets to that point. I mean, and even looking, I know it's money, but even into elementary, a lot of times I get a kid that comes into middle school, and I hate to say it, you're like, how did they get this far? They're missing so many core skills that they need to be successful in 6th grade. I mean, through different programs, we get them, most of them where they need to be, but it's a lot of work. So, I mean, whatever we could do to support them and push them and push the parents to make sure that they're coming to the program would be great, because it's only going to help them as we go on. So that's just like my thoughts with math and English, really looking at those two and pushing those, because those could lead to failures and getting left back or having to redo classes in high school.
So math is the most important subject according
No.
to the math teacher.
No,
is
but
that what we're saying?
But I'm saying like earth science, I know right now kids are struggling
Be
in
careful.
earth science.
What are you about to say about earth science?
No, I'm just saying some kids are struggling, but like
Yeah.
the one thing my son keeps saying is, well, next year it's something different. Like it's not earth science again. So if I'm not good at earth science, I'm taking living, whatever it is. Sorry, I'm not
Living
high school,
environment.
not
Yep.
high school versed yet. So he's going to take living environment. So
Mhm.
he's, just not for him.
Yeah.
He's still doing fine, but it's not for him. So, but math, unfortunately, the next year is just more math. You need those skills. It doesn't disappear. Social studies in 6th grade, you learn world, different
History, world history,
ancient
yep.
history, and then you move into, the United States history. If you didn't understand that, well, you might find, the history of the United States more interesting, and you might succeed a little bit more there. So that's what I'm kind of saying, that those to me, that if you're not successful in math or reading and writing, those are going to impact all the other subjects too.
Without a doubt, and reading has become such a lot of the state assessments and earth science. These are reading examinations and courses where you really need to be good at reading and understand, and that's really important. So yes, I get your point without a doubt.
Stephanie Volpe?
As a parent and not an educator, the student portal is ridiculously stressful. So I could understand completely why people don't log in, because you don't want to see, one day you log in, your kid's doing amazing. The next day they're, have a 20, and not my son. Just be,
Yeah, but
so I'm not
Mrs.
throwing him under the
Volpe, don't
bus.
you need to know from one day to the next? Like if we don't have that information, I know it's stressful, right? My wife winces as she's going.
Yeah, right.
Click
I
on the
hold my
buttons.
eye too, and I'm like,
But we need that information to be able to
100%
support our
agree.
kids.
I'm just
Yeah.
giving the lifeline to those that
you,
don't.
you might be
log
referring
in.
to when they update it. So
Well,
sometimes the
and
grades
then
may
that
not
was
be
what I was
updated.
going to
Oh,
carry
sure,
into.
sure.
Sometimes you don't see a grade, and then all of a sudden you think your kid's doing fantastic, and then all of a sudden 500 grades get uploaded,
Yeah.
and your kid's doing poorly, and you're like hit by a brick. You're like, that's horrible.
Understood.
The other side of it too is that I think, to piggyback off what Sabrina said, my concern, and this is previous from being on the board, is a lot of kids, and I'll use one thing as an example, aren't realizing they're even dyslexic until they're older. So what can we do as a district to give the supports to those children who are masking or faking it through and hanging on by the skin of their teeth, and only to crash when things get so much harder up in the higher grades? You know what I mean? Because what's expected in elementary school is almost manageable, especially if a kid's adaptable. So what we could see is behavior and acting out and, not going to school or not doing their homework might be a really underlying learning disability, which I've seen because I'm a mom of a kid who has special needs and another one who, just drives me nuts. But task avoidance is usually not just to be bad. It's to prevent something that they're really insecure about doing. So how can we red flag the kids before they get too far gone and struggle like what Meredith had to deal with? You know what I mean? As a district.
This is in part that, right? Saying, whoa, stop for a second. We're going to go back and we need to address this before we move forward.
So the question on the table is summer school for this upcoming summer. It's funded through grants. Okay. Does anybody have an issue with moving forward and giving direction to administration to go ahead and plan that? All right. Everybody's good? All right. Chris, you got Ms. Esterny?
But as you said, that this particular year, we're not going to implement like the mandate of it, right? That because it's too short of a time frame right now. Is that what we're saying?
That's highly recommended, Mike.
Yeah, that's what
Highly
that's the
suggested.
question on the table.
Well, okay, your position was that we shouldn't do it this year. I thought he said that.
Yeah, I did say I'm going to give you an argument as to why we might not do it this year. I'm not saying don't do it this year. I would have then just come out and said don't do it this year. I'm very interested in what the board has to say about it. It should be a concern for parents that are finding out on April 5th tonight or
right
when they get back from the break, that all of a sudden when the rumors get out and the kids will freak out about it, that a sixth, seventh, or eighth grader who's failed 2 or more subjects would be required to go to school this in the summer or repeat.
Or repeat.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I think it's difficult. Go ahead, Sabrina.
Nope, I get Meredith.
So this year, it would be a good solution if this year we said the children who are failing and in need have the option to go to summer school. We would like them to. We are not requiring them to, and we're not going to leave them back. But starting next year, and everybody knows it now because they've had a whole year and a half to know it, you fail 2 subjects by a certain time of the year, you're either going to summer school or repeating the grade. And if you fail those subjects again in summer school, you'll repeat the grade.
So I was going to say the same thing, that maybe this year the guidance counselors could reach out to those students and their parents and highly recommend that they attend. And then that we have our orientations coming up for our transitioning years, our 5th grade and 8th grade, that we can put that into those presentations to let the parents know that going forward that we are going to, require summer school if there is a failure of 2 core subjects with the passing of it in the summer in order to continue on. So at least then now that's out there, parents know. And then I think this year it should just be that conversation directly with every parent saying, listen, this is a really good thing to get your child where they need to be successful for next year.
Stephanie?
As a parent who have a child who says, yeah, I'm failing, but I don't have to go. How do you deal with that when the kid needs it? So sometimes are we now putting that onto the parents where you, as a parent, you have the opportunity to say, it's not up to me. You have to go. This is part of school. So now these poor parents whose kids need summer school this summer are going to have battle royale every morning in the summer because they technically don't have to go.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, they are the parent and they can have that conversation with that child. And yeah, I guess it'd be nice to be able to say the school is making me do this.
That's so much
we don't,
easier than
in life, we
the
don't always
battle.
get that opportunity to say
Right.
someone's making me
But we
do
just
something
heard
like
from our legal counsel that said we can't mandate it.
No, not mandated,
Yeah.
but not. It's
Not
not.
held
You
back.
can either hold back or go forward. You just can't say you have to go. You have to have the choice. So now a child doesn't have the choice and moves forward
this year.
this year, right?
Next
right.
year, it'll be different.
Because my heart breaks to the parents that are going to be fighting their kids, begging them to go to summer school, and the children are going to say, I don't have to go. My kid would go. Listen.
My only concern, I understand Stephanie's.
I'll show you where the spoon is.
I understand Stephanie's concern, but again, it's going to be April 10th now, right? I mean, I'm sure people have already made vacation plans. That's probably now they got to start considering if they're working parents, they got to figure out how to get the kid to summer school. This is going to be a little bit of a surprise. I just think it's a little late. Like I would have liked to have had this discussion, 2 months ago maybe. But at this point for this particular year, I would stay with the status quo. That's just my thought.
The only concern is then we're just promoting bad behavior. If kids are failing and we're just going to say, we'll let you go this year, next year, no. So it's a tough conversation, but we're just pushing kids along when we know they're failing and they're not going to do good. I mean, how do we
I think it's difficult to say to the community again on this day or April 17th when they come back that it needs to be that way. We've done this.
I just assume we were
for
holding
years
people back
without it.
anyway. I
No,
just assumed, right,
we
we're
have
just-
not for many years.
Yeah.
And so, Patty, you had some of these
We're
conversations.
just pushing people along. But yeah, it's not good.
You've had some of these conversations with the board. This kind of outcome where this year we're going to strongly recommend and next year we're going to actually recommend and hold back if they don't go. How do you think that would go over with the middle school principals?
I think the middle school principals are extremely concerned for some of their 8th grade students who are heading to the high school and have failed all of 6th grade, 7th grade, and now 8th grade. And we're sending them to the high school with no foundation. And I want to really stress this, a lot of the students we're speaking about, it's not children that are struggling, because most of those children that are struggling and they have putting in the work, the teachers are working with them. These are students that are not coming to school. They're not doing any of their work. They're not putting in any effort. And now we're just promoting them. So I think putting it out here now, those students that are on the fence and that can still pass know how to put the work in and work with their teachers and the school and their counselors to do what they have to do to pass, but some of these students are the ones that are doing nothing, and we're promoting them to ninth grade with no foundation.
I'm sorry, I know everyone wants to talk, but now you have intrigued me as well. So you're saying that we have students that failed 4 cores in 6th, 4 cores in 7th, 4 cores in 8th. So
Almost.
Okay, well,
Yeah,
almost.
When you look at the numbers that the middle school principals have provided, and Frank and Donna can speak on this, we have 8th graders that have failed most of their 3 or more subjects in 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, and we've promoted them, and now we're sending them to the high school where they need that foundation, because now it's credit bearing at the high school. They're not going to have the foundation to be successful at that level.
So, all right.
Meredith, then I'm going to come back to Alex.
So we have these resources already. We could implement this right now and say, hey, listen, these kids that are struggling, they can go to summer school. Yes, their parents will have to get them there, but they can go and they can sort of catch up. We have to remember that these kids were babies in 5th grade when the pandemic hit. They got really screwed, sorry about the word, but in 5th grade, in 6th grade, in 7th. Now they're in 8th grade. It's like, and they just weren't prepared the way every other set of students transitioning from 5th to 6th, 7th, and 8th were. So I get it. There are kids out there that are going to say, well, if I don't have to do it, I'm not doing it. And then there are other kids that if their parents push them, it might just be that little push that they need. It's not for us to decide how we push a kid. It's for us to say, we have these resources. Let's just do it. And what's the worst that happens? If you help a kid, you help a kid.
Alex? Let's train of thought. Okay. I'm going to be honest. I personally think we should offer it. I do. It's a little surprising to hear that we've had kids fail so many subjects and we just move them forward. We're setting them up for failure when we do things like that. So I think moving forward, I think we need to have, put some accountability on the children, saying, look, you have to pass. Otherwise, it's going to be that much more difficult when you get to the next level. But we have to provide the resources as well. If we're willing to provide the resources, the kids have to make a decision. If I don't go, I'm going to repeat 8th grade again. If I don't go, I'm going to repeat 7th grade again. And I understand your concern about parents fighting with the child, but there's got to be, accountability and consequences. You don't want to set the kid up for failure. We're not trying to hurt the kid. We're trying to make them better. And that's how we have to kind of approach this. But if we have the money this year, personally, I think we should offer it. Vacations. How long is summer school? 8
A
weeks,
month.
right? It's 1 month. That's it.
Yeah. I believe it goes from July 10th to August 10th.
All right. So, I know people have vacations scheduled. For some reason, I remember it being longer. Yeah.
There's a Regents a week later, so it can be extended. You can do a 6-week program also, it depends on the
I
program.
guess the point I'm trying to make is even if vacations is set, vacations are 1 week, and a child could still be successful, by taking that book maybe on vacation and doing the work that they need to do.
Some schools 4 days a week.
I believe so. Yes,
Yeah.
Monday through Thursday.
Right. So it's 4 days a week for 4 weeks.
It used to be 5
It's
weeks,
16.
but right now this is listed on the flyer as 4 weeks.
Mhm. But because again, it was more along the lines of credit recovery. So they have the seat time already. So it's a rehashing of everything as opposed to the depth that they would get during the school year. So we just have to be thoughtful about that. And I don't know if you can, I had summer school in the city. You missed 3 days, you were out of the whole program. Now we're saying that we're going to give them, a week, 5 days or 4 days of 16, we'll excuse that. That would be a concern.
Alex?
I don't want to put him on the spot, but can I have Frank's opinion?
Frank's retired.
What's your?
Frank's retired.
Well, he's outgoing, so he's not going to have to field the phone call.
You guys have to make a decision, but it's definitely something that's worthwhile to have a summer school, mandated or not. It's worthwhile. If it's not mandated, we're strongly encourage kids to go.
Yeah, we're definitely having it either way.
We use very strong words to say, like, you really need to go to this, you should go to this, you're going to go to this.
In actuality, in any
given year. Keeping parents new.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It's generally late notice to the parent anyway. If you don't know that the child is really failing for the year, you know, until near the end of the.
Tana, go ahead, grab the mic. Thank you very much.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Are we good?
Yeah, Frank, I heard you, but Tana, if you don't mind, go ahead, reiterate what you're going to say.
What I was saying, I guess, like even in past years when we had summer schools 6, 7, 8 years ago, 9 years ago, whatever it was still late notice because generally we gave notice early to say this is a possibility, but the final decision was always late because you gave the child the fourth quarter to catch up.
All right, so can we on the 17th, when we get back, start getting out notices of those kids that would be in danger?
We send out letters every single year, regardless of summer school or not, your child's in danger of failing 1, 2, 3, or 4 courses.
Right, but we don't send a letter that says, by the way, they're going to go to summer school now.
We used
or
to,
be
we don't-
retained.
We used to, we don't anymore.
Can we put that, Frank, what would be the turnaround on that? When we come back on the 17th, I mean, you're off tonight, right?
We had a sentence into the letter and send it out.
Okay, all right, are those letters are ready to go? They're kind of queued up? Right after the second market
template.
period? Okay.
Yeah, we get from Sue Buckberg, we get the list at
Okay.
the end of the third quarter.
I just have I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I have no problem requiring the 8th graders.
That's what I was going to say. Can that be the happy medium, that it's the 8th graders that are required to go to be promoted to 9th grade? And because it's late notice in the year, but moving forward would be our 6th, 7th, and 8th
The
graders.
sooner we get them, the better. Because like we said, if they're constantly retaking courses in the high school, we know what path that could lead to for most students. So the sooner that we get them, at least the 7th graders, we'll have them again in 8th grade, hopefully in the 9-period day with the double math and
just-
science again, that we could get them caught up in those subjects utilizing those periods. So the 8th graders really concern me because going into high school with, like you said, credited courses that are going to lead to college or their career, we want to make sure that they're getting caught up sooner than later. So I'm fine with the 8th grade piece.
Patty, you're going to have staffing implications possibly, right? If kids stay behind, then you may have to open sections. Like we just have to be cognizant of that.
Yes, but we're talking, in the 8th grade, if we're looking at our 8th grade, it's a handful of
I
students.
think it was a total of 30 kids across the 3
across
schools.
the 3 middle schools. So if we get a good portion of them to go to summer school and be successful in summer
It
school.
wouldn't require
It
staffing
wouldn't require the
implications.
staffing component.
Good idea. Thank you.
Mr. Picarillo?
I'm good with the 8th grade. I think it's going to help. I think it's a good step in the right direction. My only concern, and I brought it up, the first thing that I said was, especially since we're doing this at East, we could have kids that live all the way down over near Church Street in Holbrook. We have kids that live all the way over near the lake, near Winona or the mall. You know, if they are a single family home, mom's working 9 to 5, how do they get to this? Does this turn into, I have the ride, I don't have the ride, I have not, what do we do to support those kids that need this and can't get to this? Now they're not getting moved forward because they don't have the ability. That's the concern that I feel like at least you guys as a team need to work on and bring back and say, we have to have something for these kids because they should not be included because they don't have the ability.
Why do we do it at East, Patty?
I think we've done it in East through the SCOPE program last 2 years
Yep.
based on the work that was being done in the district. But maybe for this program in particular, like the middle school program, we do it somewhere more central. Because at the high school program, we can continue to do it East. Again, that's a credit recovery. So if they choose not to go, that's something they're not getting the credit on and they can take again in the high school. But if we were to relocate the middle school, summer school, in a central location, making it more feasible for all of the community. That'd be
Do we
something to
need
look at.
2 administrators then? We need one at East and one here? Like, let's just say we did it here, Somerset. Centrally located.
Maybe we take a look at where we're running our other scope programs and see if there's rooms available for that, since it's just the 4 core subjects.
All right, so we'll have to come back with a plan for that then.
Yes.
Good. If I'm hearing the board correctly, then 8th grade, do it now. Right?
Yeah.
8th grade, do it now, 2 or more.
At the minimum.
Okay.
You might get some parents coming back and say, my child's a 7th grader. How come it's not offered to my?
They could go. It's offered.
Oh, we're still
Yep,
going to offer
yep.
it. We
We're still
wouldn't
offering.
talk
We're not
about
requiring it.
retention.
Okay. All right, let's be clear then, right? 8th graders will be retained if they fail 2 or more subjects this year. And we're going to get, and don't attend summer school. We're going to get those notices out right away, Mr. Panassi. Don, we're going to hold you to that.
Frank, aren't you glad you came tonight?
Last one here. Thank you so much, and I appreciate the conversation there. I know it took some time, but I thank you for it. Field testing 2023. Last year, we brought before the board that the state had asked that we offer field tests to our students. The purpose of the field tests are in grades 3 through 8. They want to improve those tests. There's an outcry the past many years about the 3 through 8 tests, the assessments, and how they don't meet up with what the requirements are. They aren't great indicators. And we have a great many people, we're up to 75% in some areas, opting out of the 3 through 8 state tests. So we've told the state that the tests aren't good with, we did our voting with our feet. The kids are not taking the tests. So the field test is supposed to improve the state tests. And that's why they want us to do the field tests, because they want us to get a look at questions beforehand, hopefully get feedback on those field tests. And the answers would then, those tests would inform next year's 3 through 8 tests. That's how they improve the test. So the state sends out these field tests. This year they sent us 12 different field tests in grades 3 through 8. Some are computer-based tests, some are paper-based tests. They're in subjects, they're in ELA or math. And so once again, last year you told us, pack them up, send them back to the state. Our parents don't want to utilize them, and we feel that it is not useful use. It's not a good use of our time for our students, because you have to give up class time to do them, and a lot of work has to go into them. So we sent them back last year. The state did send me an email saying, we're going to send them back to you again. It was the end of the year, and that ended up not happening. But I'm looking for direction from the board. We just received this email this past week, 12 new field tests. They want us to field test them before moving forward. I wanted to bring it to the board for discussion.
Right. Sabrina?
Are we required to do field testing? Are we mandated?
Mr. Venator.
The state would say yes. If you ask me what is the penalty if you choose not to, I don't know what that penalty is, but the state says yes. If you
That
ask
it's
the state, are we
mandatory.
required? Yes.
It's a state mandate that we give field tests.
That's what the state says. But as you can see, last year there wasn't an outcome. There wasn't a penalty imposed. I don't know what would happen if it was 2 years in a row. I
But
don't know.
don't they insert field test questions into the regular state
They had begun to embed field test questions in there. My sense is that they don't have enough field test questions in there. They don't want the test to get too long. That is a complaint already about the test. So they're doing these separate field tests. These tests take approximately 1 period.
So just to paint the picture, and this is not just HM in most school districts, we have local assessments. So iReady and NWEA, we use all those. Those take about 2 to 3 days per subject. So we do math and ELA. So 3 times a year, because you want to see the growth beginning, mid, end. So 2, 4, 6 class time gone, right?
Yeah, at
Period
most,
per
it's
se.
typically 2 in the fall, 2 in the winter, and 2 in the spring. It can be done in one essence period. It could be 1, 1, 1. It would be 3 times during the year. You could lose 3,
I
but it could be
speak
up to.
from experience. Most of
Mhm.
my students take 2, if not 3 class periods to
Okay.
complete it. So I want to see their true ability, ask them not to
Sure,
rush, et
take their
cetera.
time, right.
So there's 6 days right there. Then we lose 2, 4, 6, 2, 4 at least for ELA and math, the
Yes.
state assessment.
Yes.
Okay, so now we're up to how many days?
10.
10. So that's 2 weeks of real learning that is missed. Now let's add in field tests. Now we're missing more learning. We're learning more real learning that these kids could be doing, games they could be playing, science projects they could be doing. And for what? Tests, standardized tests. Children are not standardized. They're not standard. Those tests are not going to tell me as a teacher with 21 years anything new that I don't already know about them. I know their strengths. I know their weaknesses. I know what they need. And those tests don't give us any information. Your child's a 1, 2, 3, 4. They don't tell me that my child needs more help with volume, that my child doesn't understand how to combine like terms, that my child doesn't know how to inference. And if you've ever looked at the ELA tests, they're not comprehension. They're not inferencing. It's what is the author's purpose. When anybody here reads, do you look to how this paragraph is about the author's purpose? No, we read for enjoyment. We read for empathy. We read to learn. That's not what these tests are assessing. And they're not the information they're giving us. Our children's teachers are giving the information they need. Even the NWA, iReady, I could see the growth that my kids are making. I'm sorry if my voice is shaking because you can tell this is my thing, my passion. I believe in data. Data does drive instruction, but we're not getting the data from the state to drive instruction the way it needs to be. I feel like, unfortunately, it's just a waste of valuable class time that we need to get kids caught up. We need to be connecting with our students, not throwing them on a computer, taking a computer-based test, telling me that the student that reads on a 3rd grade level, you're going to be a 1. We know, I teach 6th grade. A child that's reading on a 3rd grade level in 6th grade, you're going to be a 1 on a state assessment. There's going to be no surprise by that. We have children with IEPs with legal documents saying that they are reading below grade level, and they're giving them a grade level test. You have ENL students. We have, I teach a large population of ENL students. They're here one day in this country. They take the math exam. I want to ask any of you to go to another country and take their math exam, word problems. It's not just what's 2 + 2, word problems, and tell that kid to take that test. You have to take that test. And me as a teacher and us as a district, that child needs to be proficient. It's wrong. It's wrong on so many levels, and I do not want to participate in that. I don't believe the field tests are improving the test. We have asked numerous times to be part of the conversation to help change education, and we get ignored over and over. Do this, do this, do this, and not enough input. Things have to change. We've heard tonight things need to change in so many aspects. We're told, but we don't get the input on the field test. I don't get to tell you what I think of that question or the wording of it. When you ask multi-standard questions in a multiple choice, of course, a kid that might understand volume, but you put fractions in it. Is it that they don't understand volume, or do they not understand fractions? Are we getting that data from those tests? No, but you know who gets that data? Me, when I grade their test. I could tell that the child knew how to do length times width times height, but they didn't know how to multiply fractions. So where am I going to help that kid? With multiplying fractions. We don't get that data from the state tests.
Ms. Picarella?
Yeah, I'd be pretty stupid to follow that up. So I agree with everything that Sabrina just said, and I'm a hard no. I'm a hard no on field tests.
Ms. Fulby?
One of the things that happened a few years ago, Sachem prided itself in opting out, and we were leaders in our nation at opt-out rates. So why, if our community doesn't want the kids taking the test, why would we be helping make a test that's a horrible assessment, try to make it better when people don't want their kids to even take it? So, and we were leaders in that, and our opt-out rates are insane, and it also affects our ranking, which when we go and look things up, we're heartbroken, that some of our schools rank on these artificial rankings low, but it's because our kids aren't taking the test. And that's by parent request. So trying to help a system that's broken, I think I'm a hard no as well.
I'm going to weigh in myself. As a 31-year teacher, there's never enough time during the educational day to be able to work with the kids the way you want them to work with. And anytime a state throws an exam in there, or even worse, a pilot exam, it just is a complete disruption to the whole educational process. It breaks the momentum of the class. It changes, the character or the personality of a child who's doing really, really well. All of a sudden, you give them one of these pilot exams. Doesn't understand it, fails it miserably. Now it takes you time to build them back up and build their confidence back up. So, to Sabrina's point, if we had feedback, if we had some type of feedback from the state saying, hey, look, this is where they scored low, this is what you need to work on, I could see the value in them. But we don't get that, and the fact that we're doing it 6, 8, 10, 12 times a year, okay, is a lot of wasted time, So I've always taken this position. I am an absolute no on field tests. I don't understand how they could be mandated, okay, when the actual state assessment's not mandated. People have the opportunity to opt out of it. But pilot tests and practice tests are mandated?
We could do the same. We could offer them because they're mandated by the state, but folks could opt out of the field tests.
Yeah.
This was a question insofar as, are we even going to offer them?
Yeah, I'd say, and look, this is my same opinion last year, pack them back up in a box and send them back. And then we'll have to deal with consequences if there's any at all. That's my personal opinion. But any other comments from the board? Meredith?
So I was under the impression that if possibly, and my kids have always opted out because I think the tests suck, but if I was under the impression that if we do this, maybe we can have more input. But hearing what Sabrina said, then forget it. As long as there's no blowback to the district, and maybe we didn't get blowback before because it was a COVID year. Like if there's no blowback to the district, then yeah, I would definitely say send them back.
Any other comments?
No, I'm with you guys. Send them back.
Yeah.
We had
And-
this
and-
discussion last year and it hasn't changed, so.
And we still haven't received any responses from our letters
That's what I was
asking
gonna
to
say.
put our
We
input.
offered up, alternatives that we wanted to do, and we've got nothing back from the state, so.
It's frustrating. Sometimes you give
We
a
wanna
na-
be
you
part
give-
of the
You give a
conversation.
national assessment. I've given many over my career, and there's a section for the teacher to actually write comments as to where they think they can improve it. And then the following year, you get the test, and there's been no change. So you spend hours putting together a 3-page document as to where it needs to be improved, and then you get next year's test. It's exact same issues.
If you're talking standardized tests, we
Yeah.
all talked about the geometry
Yeah.
regents last year. It was a disaster for these kids. Half the stuff wasn't even taught in the class, right? So no, testing, no.
So, Chris, I think you got
Well,
direction.
Mr. Iserni
Mr.
wants to
Iserni?
weigh
I was
in.
just going to say, again, like Mr. Reynolds, I'm not an educator. So I do really lean. I wish Mr. Bowen was here, I guess, right? We have a third educator, but certainly Mrs. Pickett's impassioned logic and rationale is very persuasive. So again, I would say we box them up and send them back.
So we're not sure, huh?
You have a clear direction, Chris?
I have clear direction, and
No, I mean, and I'm such a rule follower. So it
Yeah, you-
bothers me to do this, but we need to change education. And when we're constantly being held by the state to do things and you're not listening to the people in the classroom, you're not listening to the parents, you have, no offense, politicians making educational decisions. It's so frustrating. So I'm a rule follower. You guys know I am. And it bothers me to do this. But when are we going to say, enough's enough? Like, we have kids failing. We have kids not wanting to come to school. Yes, let's throw you in front of a test for 2 hours today. That's fun. So that's sorry. I want to make
say
that point.
someone
I'm
got
a
you
fool
started
follower.
again.
I'll start it. You got to start.
Fair enough. I appreciate the passion and the thoughtfulness.
So there's no other
If
board
you need help
discussions?
boxing them up, Rob will help you, so.
Yeah, just let me know. I got a new back. I'm all good. Yeah.
There is, I'm sure Sabrina will be in as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. No further board discussion. Thank you.
I just want to make one comment. We did have a presentation tonight that was taken off due to the fact that we had 2 board members out. It was a demographic presentation that would outline where we're doing as far as number of students enrolled in the program moving out 5 and 10 years. So that would help us plan better moving forward. The request was that we put it back on probably before the end of the school year, prior to people going on summer break, so that we can actually get people in the audience to hear what that presentation is. And so we took it off mainly because of the absence of 2 board members, one who's observing Passover that couldn't be here tonight, and one that had a medical issue.
And just to comment on that, Rob, several years ago, probably almost 7 or 8 years ago, when we did the facility study, we did a demographer study, right? Which then helped drive a lot of the conversation around school closings. I think it was about when Mr. Iserni came back on the board, he suggested, hey, let's kind of refresh that, because again, we've got to now start looking out 10, 15 years out. What does the community look like in terms of population? We continue to see the student decline. So that's what this study is about. Just
And
for
there's some valuable
clarification.
information.
It's a lot of
about
valuable
live
information.
births moving forward,
Yeah.
and what we think we're going to see,
Right.
in population as far as number of kids attending first
Right.
grade, second
So we
grade.
can make decisions on class sizes, all that kinds of things, right? We still have a building with gate lot we've got to figure out, things like that. So that's really what's driving that.
I'm going to throw it out there. First hand goes up, future discussion items. Alex Picarello.
So I'd love to hear about the feasibility of armed guards. I'm less worried about the cost and more worried about a time frame and the thought and ensuring that, I know that the public came out tonight, but note that they know that it would be on an agenda and having more people come out and give their input and
So the charge to the superintendent would be is to gather information as to touching base with other school districts to see what their time frame was, how they implemented it, who they brought in as expert consultants, and come back to the board and maybe look at what it would look like moving forward. Something like this obviously wouldn't happen overnight, right? It's something that we would have to do our due diligence with, but at least to get it so we're having a discussion so that we can continue to enhance our security program. Is everybody okay with that? Yes. Meredith, your question?
I would like to have some type of within that presentation. So, okay, I have a pistol permit. I can go take a 16-hour course to be a security guard and then another 40 some odd hour course to be an armed security guard. I have no business doing that in a school district. So there's a difference between having armed security that makes people just feel better that they're there and doing it the right way. So I think we need to really have some kind of detailed presentation from an expert. Maybe we bring back Captain Joe, but it has to be like, we can't just put armed guards in place. Like I said, you can't have me taking a 16-hour course, then a 40-something hour course, and now here I am because I'm a pistol permit holder and I pass these classes, for 50 some odd hours. I can go be an armed guard, and I can do that. It doesn't belong in a school. So it has to be done in a proper way if it's ever going to be done. It can't just be done to make people feel better and feel warm and fuzzy.
Stephanie?
Safety has to be focused on, and results and data collected on the different unfortunate events in our nation and why they happened, and if guards make it safer or if that's a narrative. We have to make sure experts are here giving us real data, because I don't ever want to be a part of a catastrophe that could have been prevented. So safety has to be the number one thing, and experts need to be consulted, because there's a lot of opinion about this. And I know, for one, I'm not one to give it. So I want the professionals in here to give us their honest opinion backed by data.
Okay, Mr. Reynolds?
So just a question on how would we structure this, and maybe Mr. Venator. Again, this is a topic that's a tough one to have in public. I think the community needs to know we're going to go down this path. But what do we say in public versus executive session? Any guidance?
Yeah, so there is a distinction. The general subject of whether or not you should have armed security, that is clearly a public discussion. The implementation of how you utilize armed guards, would be something that would not be a public discussion, would be a executive session discussion. For instance, this issue was addressed in a case involving the Hoppock School District 10 or 15 years ago, where the question was posed to the Committee on Open Government whether or not this should be an executive session or a public session. And there, the issue was cameras. They were going to be utilizing 100 cameras, and the question is, because you're using cameras, should this be a public discussion or executive session? And the Committee on Open Government said that to the extent that you're talking about 10 of those cameras where they would be hidden and you would compromise the integrity of your security, if you discussed it in the open session, it should be in executive session. But where the majority of the cameras are open and visible and everybody knows where they are, you should not have that discussion in executive session. It should be a public session. So it depends on the nature of discussion, but the general question, armed security, not armed security, that's a public discussion.
Okay, so with that, Dr. Pelletier, if that's the presentation we get set up, because I think it's a worthwhile conversation to have in public, right? I don't know where you go for that, but
Yeah, I mean, my recommendation would be is to charge the superintendent to come back with a time frame in which, perfect example, Smithtown just implemented this. How did they implement it? Okay,
Yeah.
what types of discussions?
I know
did they have?
Smithtown's process was lengthy,
Yeah.
right? And they did a lot of due diligence, from what I understand.
So at that particular point, when superintendent presents, and possibly even, at the next meeting,
Yeah.
That we can give direction, say, yeah, we're going to look to pursue and gather more information so we can make a decision.
Good.
That's what I would recommend, without having expert consultants talking to us and Suffolk County Police Department and so on and so forth. It'd be very hard to make a decision out here without having a lot of information. Mr. Cerny?
Rob, I just want to make sure we have a clear point where it's clear to the community when we're going to discuss or have at least a general presentation within the guidelines of Mr. Venator, so that we can get public comment as well. I just want anybody to be fully aware, so if they want to come speak, no matter who they are,
absolutely,
they can talk on this matter.
Okay, everybody's okay with that? Okay, any other future discussion items?
So just for clarity, that's going to be next meeting?
Chris, is it something you can
Again,
pull up for
because
next meeting or?
give the community enough notice and say, hey, in 2 weeks, we're coming back and this is the
You
conversation.
we're back
you
in
need more
2
time?
days when we come back.
Right.
So you could have the
Still enough
community
time.
come and discuss pros and cons as they see fit, but I'm definitely
I
not
know,
going to
that's-
have
you're not gonna have something in
a
2 weeks, right.
timeline, experts line up, things like
Oh,
that.
no, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about just the process and how it took place in other districts.
Oh, no,
Well,
yeah.
well, let me ask Rob, do we want to set something for the 18th where the community can at least come
Yeah.
and have public comment and do, because again, we got
absolutely.
a lot for, but we also got a good amount against, right? And I think just let the community speak.
Yeah.
Knowing that we're going to come
heard.
back and have the discussion maybe in a month, right? Or, 2 meetings from now.
Right.
Can we give a bigger buffer? Because I know this is such a stressful topic to come back from break,
Okay.
all happy, and then
Well-
2 days later there's a board meeting of something so stressful. Can we do it the following board meeting for community members?
We could. I mean, like I
Give
said,
enough
we're only
notice?
talking about 2 school days that we're going to be back.
That I
So
mean,
if
to
we
me,
wanna-
that's
if we
just
wanna
like
move it out for 2 weeks after that. that'll give the
to the
superintendent-
following meeting, and then at least it gives everybody a chance to
Allison, what was-
macerate in this a little bit,
what
because
would be the
we're
date of
we're in a
that?
holiday right now,
May 3rd.
May 3rd.
right? We have holidays going on right now. Why some people aren't even here. So like we're coming back from a break, everybody's happy, and then we're going into
So
something.
do we want to just, listen, public comment's going to happen no matter what. We don't have to put that on the agenda. People are going to come and they're going to voice their opinions, pro or, and we got to take that data so we can actually gauge the comfort of our community. But I would say, yeah, May 3rd, Chris, that would give you enough time to come back and lay out a process if we did want to pursue it. This is what we would do and this is what the plan would be.
Sure.
All right. Is everybody okay with that? All right. Steph, all right. Mr. Attorney, do you have something? Okay. Any other future discussion items? Sabrina?
Stephanie Sabrina.
Sorry.
2018, Laura was saying that we had a security summit where the community was invited. They broke into groups, so maybe where we don't have a committee where we're sharing, our secrets, in terms of security, but where it would give the opportunity for, especially if this is something that the district's going to be moving towards, to get community input, that we could have focus groups or people break into groups and give their suggestions, what they're hearing, what their concerns are. So I don't know if maybe that's something to consider with security being such on, the forefront.
Yeah. I actually attended that as a community member and it was very informative, and they did break us up into groups and teams, and each group had a building administrator there that facilitated the conversation, a lot of things discussed. So it's certainly something that perhaps in lieu of a committee, we do something like that. At least we're getting more personalized input. So yeah, it's great.
Stephanie?
I attended that. I met Meredith there. She was running for Board of Ed. I signed her petition. We were with administration, and that was amazing. It was standing room only. So many people attended this, and the community was so involved. It needed to be in a bigger room, and it was literally an incredible event for the community. And we had the experts there, and it could be again another security summit on what we are doing with the improvements that we've made and concerns directly from the community. I mean, it was a ton of people. I don't even remember how many. It was full.
No, it was packed. It was in the Seneca cafeteria. It was standing room only. But again, it was facilitated at each group with the building administrator, and it was an opportunity to get, very granular, right, in people's concerns. So certainly something we should drive
Reach
for.
out to Seneca.
Great suggestions, Sabrina.
That happened.
Laura, great.
Yeah,
Laura, yep.
I would.
Yeah.
I don't know who put that together back. Patty, were you familiar with that?
I attended it as a building principal, but
Okay.
I'm not sure who
All right,
organized
but
it.
you'll have some sense about it, or Kristen will have to get a little history on it, and then
Yep,
we'll
I
talk
remember
about
being
it.
there that
Okay.
evening as well.
We'll talk about it. Thank you.
Any other future discussion items? None? Okay. Our next meeting is scheduled for April 18th. Is that correct?
That is, it's a
Yes,
Tuesday.
that was the one that we moved
We
from
moved
the
back.
Wednesday to
It is a
Tuesday.
Tuesday because we're required to take some action at that particular meeting.
Yes, so the
Tuesday and
Tuesday
it-
is going to be the budget adoption.
Yep.
And then the Wednesday is the BOCES vote.
So Tuesday is our typical board meeting.
Yeah,
agenda,
regular
where
business.
Wednesday's
Just for BOCES.
just for BOCES.
Yes.
Okay. So at this particular point, I need a motion to go into exec session, to discuss personal matter of a staff member made known to the board, as well as a Office of Civil Rights complaint, okay, and a request for a leave of time bank. Motion, Mr. Piccirillo, second by Ms. Reynolds. All in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried. Just want to wish everybody a happy Passover and a happy Easter, and that you have a safe holiday.
Be well, everybody. Good night.